We doing it.
We doing it. We
We in
doing it.
baby,
We
and
in.
we in baby, and we doing it. That's like the kids say.
We in baby.
Oh, I just noticed I can see how many people are watching live if I
Zero.
so choose. Zero. I mean, we just started. We
Zero.
didn't tell anybody. This
Yeah.
is an unreasonable hour for somebody to be watching a live stream of
Sure.
two middle-aged comedians talking to each other. It's wild that we do this so early in the morning. I did find out we have a decent number of listeners actually. So
Seriously?
shout out to the shout out to the taggers out there who are actually listening to this nonsense.
Do we? Like, how much is a decent amount? Or are you just trying to
I
butter
feel
me
like
up?
if I say it out loud on the podcast, it's going to be embarrassing, but it's triple digits. Is that
Really?
yeah?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I would have thought
In
like
the last
50.
month, so not like per episode. Last month total listens, Trippy Dig on
Trippy
Spotify
Didge.
alone. On Spotify alone. Um,
Interesting. I mean,
yeah,
we
I
should we should get on some more podcasts to talk about our podcast. And if
we
we
could do
do,
that. I mean, I would rather talk
once we
about the
start doing
tour
shows,
than this.
yeah. But like, do both to just be like, hey, come
So I
on,
was talking to
don't
some other comedians after the open mic that I reluctantly host, and
brag.
we were talking about the podcast, and one of them asked like how many people listen. I'm like, I genuinely never looked, like, because you and I talked about it the first couple episodes. We're like, I think the only people this is for is anyone who wants to listen to me or you or both of us talk at length. Like, we're not looking to appeal to a wider audience than we already
Yeah.
have.
Well, Mike Flincham, who
He's
childhood friend
all
who's been
he's
on,
all
who's
three of those digis. It's all just flinch them.
he has said about. I was like, hey, you should come on sometime as a guest since you've been just in the chat. You've been kind
Yeah,
of
quit
part of
being
a
a weird
chat
little
guest.
creep. Get a mic. I'll
He
send
is
you the
someone who
I'll send you the
is
Riverside link.
he's crazy funny, and also a
I
dad.
just thought
His
you were gonna
children
stop
are
after two
actually
crazies.
he's
He just plays this guy. Oh
crazy.
man, this guy.
But he has dipped his toe into the waters of stand up and I think has done really well every time, but he's never been able to fully lean into it because he has children who, like, one just graduated high school, one is just starting high school. So he kind of really relegates his time to being just with family and doesn't he knows that, like, if he wants to do comedy, he's got to be able to put time into it and energy and
Ooh,
focus.
see, I disagree.
Well, I mean, he has to. No, for him, like, it works for him. Like, he's like, yeah, I get it. Like, everybody else can balance or whatever, but he hasn't gotten into it really enough to just semi even do it casually. But once he does, if he does, maybe it is one of those things that, like, people use different excuses for something that they're scared of doing, and so they're like, oh, no, my
Yeah,
focus is
do it,
my
you
family. I'll
coward.
do that
Ricky
eventually.
says you're a coward, and you should do it. You scared little
I
baby. I think that's
I
what Ricky said.
selfishly
Can we made up producer that we don't have? Can you
producer
rewind the tape and play where Ricky calls his childhood friend a coward?
Darvin, can you play back the Darvin Middleditch?
But
Um, but yeah, so I,
go ahead.
I I selfishly want him to start doing it more and getting out when he feels like he's able to, because selfishly I would love for us to do shows together, and he's one of those, the way his comedy brain works, the way I respect most people in their comedy is vastly different than mine. So it's highly enjoyable for me to watch him perform or to see how he approaches things comedically.
Sure, be pumped. I'd be pumped to have him on. I forget what I was gonna say. Oh, the thing,
Mm.
like that might be a personal thing where he's like, oh, I kind of, it's got to be all, I got to get all into it if I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
There's a comedian who I know a little bit. We were on a festival together. She a couple months ago on Threads uh, put up. She's like, oh, somebody asked me. They're like, oh, I'm thinking about getting into stand up comedy. But I think they mentioned they had like a wife and kids, and they're like, "What advice do you have?" And she's like, don't do it, because like if you're gonna do comedy, you have to like give it your all. You have to like make it your whole life. I was like, "Oh, you super don't actually. You can just do it whenever you feel like it, and then like not do it for a couple of months, and then come back once in a while. You can treat it like a bowling league. It's totally fine." I understand that for some people that is not the case, right? Like if I'm trying to think of something like I don't know, if I want to do a new thing and I find out I'm pretty good at it and I like it, I would like to do it a whole bunch, but that doesn't mean like you have to. Like crushing it in comedy doesn't need to be your goal of doing comedy sometimes. You can just do a few open mics once in a while because you think it's fun. Like that's fine. I'm not, hey, come sign up every other week at the open mic I host. You'll be statistically somewhere in the middle of the pack, especially after last night. Couple rough acts. Ricky Clore.
Who was the roughest?
I
I didn't get a petty bitch ass text from Glenn Tickle, so it couldn't have been that bad unless you were holding on to it for today.
No, it was late, and I figured you were asleep.
I love waking up because I get up early to
Please,
some bitchy Glenn Tickle text.
if it's within your power, Ricky Glore, could you grant me the confidence of someone who rolls up to an open mic, announces it's their second time on stage, reads the entire act verbatim from their phone, ignores and blows the light by a full 5 minutes, does not get a single laugh, and then
how much time were they given? Were they
5.
given 5 minutes?
Yeah,
and he did another 5. He did 10.
Look, bold of you to assume it was a man. I understand the impulse. This was not.
Sorry, when I also say him,
Yeah.
I don't. Yes, if anybody. The
look,
pronoun
you're not
game,
wrong to assume this was a dude. It's just in this one instance, it wasn't.
What I'm saying is, I wasn't even assuming it was a dude. I just say him. That like him to me a lot of times is like them, or I could also just say her and replace it. It has zero any like sexist or whatever. I know like the doctor like, oh, did you go to the doctor and did he give you a prescription? It's like,
Darvin,
well,
can you roll
she
back and
gave
play
me
where Ricky says
Darvin.
that women can't do stand-up comedy?
All right,
Darvin,
here we
can you
go.
play the
Here's the
clip?
theme. Here's the theme.
Listen, motherfuckers, open up your ears. The bad boys of comedy are here. Crossing all the lines, ain't holding nothing back. Teabagging all the audience with their comedy sex. These daddios, these daddios.
Teabagging the audience with their comedy set.
These daddios, these daddios, these daddios. They'll be soaking up these
Yeah. I thought D's Daddios and a theme of ours. I mean, should we just rename the podcast to the Bad Boys of Comedy?
No, I think.
Can we call the first Daddio tour the Daddio tour semicolon the Bad Boys of Comedy? And like
well,
you
that
and I
would
are
be
just
the
like,
second one, right?
oh yeah,
That's the
too bad,
subtitle
two
for the
boys.
second one. Too bad, two boys. Hey, can we as a society stop? Can we let Electric Boogaloo die as a thing as like a joke sequel title? I know it's a real movie, right?
Yeah.
But I remember like in high school, fucking 70 years ago when I went to American high school, that was like people were making that joke then of
it's
something to Electric Boogaloo.
Because it is the best. So the only other best subtitle of a title of a sequel is House 2, the second story. Like that's fucking brilliant. Like
no,
so
I mean as much as I hated it, calling it Beetlejuice is probably the best sequel title.
It's great because then the third one's Beetlejuice. I also
the
hated
new batch,
Beetlejuice.
Like there's other ones you can use. It's just
they're not as fun.
I don't care.
It doesn't have the
just,
rhyme. You don't get to say Boogaloo.
I didn't.
So finish.
I've never
Old
seen
Man Glenn.
Oh.
Finish your comedy story. Gosh, you're starting off like me.
This
Did
person
you
at
take
the
your
open mic
ADHD?
came.
This person, this woman or girl?
This woman and or girl.
geriatric.
I didn't ask age. I hate when a comedian.
Women. Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to say
how
when
many
women
times
do comedy.
they've been on stage. Does that make
Agree.
sense? When they're like, "Oh,
Yes.
it's my first time." Oh, I don't care. Like You telling an audience this is my first time will immediately get them on your side, but I feel like it's a lazy little trick. I don't like it when hosts do it because I feel like that's you got to leave that up to the person to decide if we're telling anybody it's their first time. Um, but also it's weird when it's any other number besides your first time, you know? But this lady was like, "Oh, it's my second time on stage."
Gosh, I kind of feel like this needs to be my new opener.
Oh, you know what? I
Is
might be
just say,
conflating two of the people, or maybe two people said. A lot
This
of
is my
people.
first time.
No, it was a couple people said this is my. There were a couple first timers. A couple people said that it was their second time, and I'm like, why is everyone doing this tonight? But the one person says this is my second time on stage. Held their phone this close to their face the whole time. Read it. Did not look up once to see the
that's
light.
not an excuse. That is not an excuse for reading off your phone, it being your second time on
Correct.
stage. I'm sorry.
Ran the light and admitted. So I was hosting and I was timing everybody to give the light. I did forget to start the timer right away. So I told a couple people, it's like, oh, like if you watch the tape and you saw that you did like 6:20, that's my fault, not yours. Except for like this is the only person. No, two people ran the light, and it was this lady and then one of the people did it for the first time. But he was having
motherfuckers.
he was having a good set, so it's like, all right, I'll take 40 more seconds of a pretty good first time set from a guy that I know a little bit. You know, I'm more forgiving when it's going good, but this was it was a brutal 5 minutes stretched into a pretty brutal 10. I walked back to where the soundboard was to just like Oscar style play her off, but I couldn't get the sound to work on the board. And
You played the Daddy-O, four
tech-
different Daddy-O themes.
the tech wasn't sitting at the board; they were at the front desk of the room, doing something else.
Sounds like you run a real shoddy open mic, Glenn Tickle.
Yeah. Well, at some point, I'm just like loudly whispering off the side of the stage, "Hey, you're way over your time. Get off the stage." And it just didn't seem to clock. Then, after the show, so the way it works, right? You come do this open mic. It's every other week for a few months. At the end of it, my co-host Catherine is going to curate a showcase, pulling from people who've performed on the open mic, right? So if you want to
It's
get
the
on this
best-
showcase, you got to.
It is the most democratic of a way to do a show and to
It
get
is
booked for
the
something
most
further.
needlessly complicated bullshit I think I've ever been associated with. But
But we've talked about that though, of like having a place that is like, these are the steps. If you do these steps, you will be on something else. Like basically, if you kind of work at it, if you come prepared,
you
if you're
got to
not
put a
chalk
carrot
rocket-
at the end of that stick, you know?
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. But
But they should just be regularly booking showcases of local talent as a comedy venue.
they should. But does Glenn Tickle want to run that?
Glenn Tickle doesn't want to do
I don't.
shit. Glenn Tickle
Glenn
wants to sit
Tickle-
around, watch the A-Team.
Drink a treat. Watch the A team.
Oh.
A team, just not the team. A team.
One team. Buddy, have I got a surprise for you? So remember, so basically that's the end of the story. This person ran the light, did a bad job, and then after the mic came up to ask us about getting booked on the showcase. And it's like, well, step one, don't do
hell yeah.
5 additional minutes of bad comedy. But that's pretty much the end of the story. But have I got a surprise for you? So last week we talked about A-Treat's delicious glass bottle sarsaparilla, and I'm pleased to announce the special Glen Tickle edition. This is definitely not just a sticker that I put on a bottle. This is official licensed A-Treat soda with a picture that I drew, and I drew the picture of me, and it says "Real boy with feelings, Glen Tickle." So this is a real soda that exists in the world and isn't just a sticker I put on a bottle.
But I mean, hell yeah, let's get that out there. And
Also, did you know
do
that it's sarsaparilla and not sarsaparilla?
sarsaparilla?
I mean, they
It
put
might
the
be
sticker on over the
spelled.
first S. So it looks like sarsaparilla, but sarsaparilla.
Just because there's an R in it doesn't mean it's pronounced. I'm not sure if you understand English.
Yeah, no, my
language.
dad's
It's
from Staten Island.
weird words.
I understand that some people are playing pretty fast and loose with when you use the letter R.
Sarsaparilla.
It's weird because my dad's one of 7 kids, and so like I know my aunts and uncles. He talks like me basically. Like he sounds a little bit more like he's from Staten Island than I do. My aunts and uncles all sound like if you were gonna make a cartoon character about people from Staten Island, that's what they sound like.
I love when the regional voice is 100% fit, like the region that they are from.
Yeah, like my Aunt Linda, I love her to death. She's never pronounced an R in her life, not a single time.
Well, and then there's the like I grew up with a friend who overpronounced R's. So like as a child, it gives them like a cute little like whoa 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 like kind of that like little kid voice.
Sure.
But then there's like that mark. There's that age where once you get past, I would say 9, maybe 10, if you keep on having a speech impediment. Uh, Here's a funny judgmental thing. So my wife and my mother-in-law, her mom, we like watching the different holiday baking shows or the kids baking shows
Sure.
and or Chop Junior. And the one thing that they audibly, so both teachers, both lifelong teachers, family of teachers of small children, the one thing they will audibly like judge every time it happens is if one of those kids has a speech impediment of any sort. They're just like, oh, those parents. Like, it's not cute when you're 10 years old or 12 years old. And like, you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna bake a cake today. Like, like they just, it is nails on a chalkboard for them because they're just like, why aren't the parents doing something to help those kids out? Like, it's not a cute, like, oh, they're so adorable.
I don't love that about your wife and mother-in-law. Is that who we're talking about?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure you have something that grates on you that people are just like, why don't you just let that go, Glenn?
Oh
And
no,
you're
I'm
just
a
like,
pretty
"I will
cool, normal,
not."
chill dude who doesn't get irritated at weird stuff at all. I think if my brand says anything, it's a relaxed, normal guy.
Well, and that's
Definitely
the thing is like my
not a guy
wife and my
started a
mother,
podcast with his friend to complain about stuff every week.
my wife and mother-in-law are super caring, loving, like would never do that in front of a child or say that in front of a child, like or would never do any kind of
Or
like
would never want
aversion
you to
therapy.
say it out loud on a podcast that 3 digits worth of people listen to.
Fucking 3 digits.
Yeah,
You know the theme song for next week is gonna be.
I'll let you know what the actual number is, but I feel like if I say it out loud on the podcast,
100. It's just 100.
People are going to be like, it's cute that they think that's a big number. And I want to be clear, I don't. I know it's not a big, like, more people still listen to Improvised Wikipedia, the podcast I did with my other friend John for a long time, regularly than listen to this show, even though we haven't made a new episode of that in like 3 years.
Oh, so people are still listening to the back catalog more than
Yeah.
they're listening to Daddy-O? Well, that's sad.
But people.
That's not a
listen.
great feeling.
But again,
I'm kidding.
well, I mean, it's John and I had more chemistry. I think we're really pinging and ponging. Also, it's because it had a topic and a reason for people to listen who aren't just fans of us.
Well, Senior Mike Flincham, future guest, future comedian, hopefully, said that he likes the podcast.
The sexual
listening to
energy
it.
we bring.
Pretty much. He's just
Yeah.
like, you guys have a good yin and
The
yang,
natural
and
The natural charisma. the will
neither
they
of
won't
you
they.
has a speech impediment that I can't get past.
I
Like,
hate
that's
that.
what.
Like people
Why?
have
Why
speech
does that?
impediment-
So you, yeah,
People have
but
speech
like,
impediments for a lot of reasons. It's not just a matter of like, oh, the parents didn't try hard enough to get them to speak normally.
I don't know though, but like when they're being paraded on television and they're like they're part of the machine of just like, look at these wee little kids cooking. Like
I have a friend
there
who's a
is
speech impediment because he's partially deaf. I'm like,
sure,
yeah, that
and
wasn't 'cause his
again,
parents were
he's
like,
not
hey,
a
talk-
child.
Talk normal, weirdo.
He's not a child on a
He was
kid's
at one
baking
point a
show.
child. He used to be.
He's not a child.
He's
though.
somewhat older than me, so it's been a minute, I'm sure.
And I'm gonna bet dollars to donuts. He probably did some sort of speech therapy, so he probably did work on it.
yeah,
Look,
but then
I'm
to be
not
like, oh, well, he
standing
still
up
has a
for-
speech impediment, so he didn't try hard enough. That's the thing that I don't like.
It cracks me. No.
But again,
It's
the
not
thing where they're
him
like,
not
well, yeah,
trying.
they're not going to complain to somebody's face. I guess that is better. I don't know. I feel like I've occasionally come down, I think, too harshly on your wife.
Oh no, that's okay.
I was
Go-
listening
I'm
to
fucking-
an episode.
Go down
I'm
on
like,
her.
oh,
Just go down on her hard. Just keep on going down hard
no,
on my
hey,
wife.
Hard pass. She seems like
Hard
a great.
pass. Hard
Oh,
pass.
you're making it worse.
hard.
Seems like a great lady.
Yes, I think you would. I think you would enjoy my wife very much.
I'm sure I would.
I think if you went hard down on my wife, you would enjoy her. Hard.
I did a. I'm not going to do it on the show right now.
Yeah.
But I did a somewhat horny joke last night.
Oh, why? Why aren't you going to do it on the show?
Because my wife's home right now and might hear me.
Okay. Whisper it. Here.
No, like doing it at an open mic that like no one's gonna see, versus putting it on the internet. You know.
Did you do I already know the horny joke? Did you
I don't
already
think
tell
so.
me it? Okay. God, now the audience is just so.
Well, I'll do. Here's the joke. There's a
triple
horny
digits
line
are
in the
getting
joke.
horny. Yeah.
The joke is about the movie Jaws and how it's like
That should, your joke, the horny joke, be like, this is the dirtiest, horniest joke I have. Like, there's a line and it gets really horny, and like, I don't know if I should do it. The audience is like, do it. You're like, okay. It involves the movie Jaws, and that should be it. And that, because I think that is.
you know how horny Jaws is. Honestly, when they're on the boat,
I mean, it's called
a
Jaws.
little horny. Basically, so
Just the name.
I start the joke. I was watching Jaws with my 6-year-old the other day, not the whole thing. I didn't like sit her down. But
This is your horny joke.
yeah. But
Also, to comment, you're wearing that fucking sweater again.
yeah, now I'm just
now I
doing
feel
it out
like
of
it's
spite,
turning into
honestly.
a bit.
Yeah. I slept in it last night because it was a little chilly, and I was like, I should get changed, and then I was like, no, I'm gonna
Jeez,
do this
Clint
to irritate
Tickle.
Ricky. I
Quit
like
being a hobo.
this sweater a lot. So the joke is I was watching Jaws with my 6-year-old the other day. Not the whole thing. I'm not a monster, but I was watching Jaws. She walked in and she's like, "What are you watching?" I said, "Jaws." She says, "Is that movie you're always talking about?" I said, "No, that's Buckaroo Banzai." And she's like, "Can I watch it with you?" And there's a lot of like yucky, scary stuff that happens in Jaws that would be inappropriate for a 6-year-old to watch. But they were already on the orca. So all the yucky stuff is like first half, then they get on the boat,
Yeah.
and then it's pretty chill until the very end. So it's like, oh yeah, you can watch this part, and then I'll tell you like when you can't watch anymore, because I didn't want her to watch Quint get eaten, you know.
Yeah.
So we're watching the boat part, which is I got to imagine boring for a 6-year-old, thrilling for me, a 41-year-old man.
It's when they're talking about the injuries and the different
Yeah.
things. They're showing each other their scars. Yeah. That's fascinating. But yeah,
But
that's
I
a lot
talk
talking.
about all the yucky stuff that happens in the first part. You're right, like the kid gets eaten. You see like body parts from the other attacks. But
Yeah.
the yuckiest thing that happens in Jaws is when they're lowering Hooper down into the water in the shark cage because he's going to try to dart Jaws. He goes to put his goggles on. Brody is up on top of the boat still. He's like, "Oh, Hooper, your glasses." So Hooper takes his glasses off, hands them to Brody, and then Brody goes like this. He puts another person's glasses in his mouth. And that's the yuckiest thing that happens in Jaws, because I don't like that I just did that with my own glasses. Like I wouldn't do that
Yeah.
with my wife's glasses.
You're like a librarian that's like, like just,
Also, Jaws only happens over the course of a couple of days. It's not like they're old pals, you know? Like he just met this dude 2 days ago. And
there's I mean, obviously the intense nature of why all these people are together and what is happening, kind of like I mean, it is that Enemy of the People, Arthur Miller adaptation of a Russian book, where there's the
Dog, I have no idea
water
what you're
supply
talking
gets
about.
poisoned. Really? You are way smarter than I am.
I
So
mean,
in
I don't know what
college,
this
we had a play script analysis class, and I had a professor named Sandra Foreman. She was a Southern lady with very bright dyed red hair and wore many a scarf and looked like a college theater teacher through and through. So her play script analysis class, we read Enemy of the People, which is the Arthur Miller adaptation of I think the Ibsen maybe play or book. adapted from Russian text, and it's about this town who has these hot springs and these spas.
Yeah.
The water
And
gets
it gets poisoned because
contaminated.
somebody does a pee-pee in it.
Well, I'm not sure why it gets poisoned, but
Pee-pee.
the scientists and the doctors in town are just like to the mayor, they're like, you got to shut this down, and he's like, it's our biggest commerce. So of course it ends up biting him in the butt.
You gotta shut this hot spring down. It's full of piss.
Like there is a Twix bar just like floating on top.
And he's like, no, that's
But-
why people come.
Oh,
They love
I
hot
like
piss
it,
springs.
baby. Jaws is so horny. But anyway, for that class, when I watched or when I read Enemy of the People, I was just like, holy shit. I was like, this is Jaws. And my whole like 4-page paper was just like, it's Jaws, it's Jaws, it's
Yeah.
a tale, like it's a tale as old as time and blah, 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 blah. And so then the next year, some of my friends are taking her class and she never changed her syllabus. And I was just like, if you guys read Enemy of the People, you don't even have to read it. Like, just watch Jaws and write about Jaws. And then so, like, a couple weeks later, Sandy was walking in the halls and she's like, Mr. Glore. And I was just like, yeah. She's like, please stop telling the younger classmen that Enemy of the People is Jaws. I had 5 papers that of kids who clearly did not read the play and just wrote about Jaws. But
Jaws is probably
that's what's
better.
great is Jaws is something that they're
Really
like they
good, you're
just
right.
met, but they are all three on each other's nuts so hard. Like the lack of respect that they have for one another, it is literally that thing of like, man, I don't agree with you, but God damn it, do I respect you? Like with
Yeah.
Roy Schreider, like it's his come to Jesus moment. It is the kind of y- I don't know why Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell? William Campbell?
Yeah, Joseph Campbell.
Joseph William
Hero of a
Campbell?
Thousand Faces. You got it.
Yeah. I mean,
Joey
it's
Cam.
Jaws. I think Jaws is one of the best representations of that, especially with those 3 men, and also different stages of life.
Yeah, it's good. Jaws, great hot take that Jaws is good. I agree. It kicks ass.
Oh, I will say I don't think Jaws is as amazing because I didn't grow up with it. I watched it more later in life, like within the last like 15 years.
Oh, I mean, the good news is that it's still great now. It's been good the whole time.
Interestingly enough, we weren't much of a Spielberg house because
Because E.T.
my dad would
sucked.
pick. My dad would pick and choose. Yeah, I don't think he loved E.T.
It's
but
so
like
boring.
it existed. The movie that like we would watch Raiders and we would watch Last Crusade, and I knew Temple of Doom existed, but because my dad disliked it so much, he didn't own it and we didn't have it like in the house.
I think that's the one I watched the most as a kid for some
It
reason.
makes sense. It's that
Um,
it's the dark, like last of the PG movies before they made PG-13.
I believe that was PG-13.
I believe it is one of the reasons why PG-13 exists. I
don't
think
you're
there were 3 movies I think in the same year that came out that they were like, ooh, we need to have another another classification because some of these things are a little too dark. Temple of Doom rating. Oh, you're putting it in the chat?
No, I did it on the chat by accident because I'm an idiot who doesn't know how computers work. I was trying to do a search to just look it up real time style since Darwin is slacking.
Oh, Darwin. Why? Like, can we get rid of Darwin?
Darwin, I think we're gonna have to let you go, bud.
Are we gonna have to like kick him to the curb? Like
I think we have to kill Darwin.
I think we have to ritualistically pull Darwin's heart out of his chest and say mala 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 and sacrifice him. That's what I think we have to do. Did you find it? Hello, darkness,
I'm
my
reading.
old friend. I've come to talk with you again. I believe it's 1983.
So within 2 months of the film's release, the MPAA adjusted the rating system to add PG-13. So it was 2 months after the release of Temple. So I think they changed it after the fact. You know?
Head full of useless knowledge. You're welcome, Glenn Tickle. I might not be a
Red
smart
Dawn
man,
was
but
the
I do know what
first,
love is.
was the first movie released with a PG-13 rating.
As it should be. Kids just getting slayed by Russians. Kids getting slayed and laid.
What were we talking about? Temple of Doom. Oh, and ET being boring.
Yeah.
Which it is. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, Temple was the one I watched the most. It might just be because like that's the one we had on tape. I don't think my parents weren't into.
There's also a kid in it. It's more. I mean, it's dark, but it technically, by de facto having short round,
Yeah.
and it's a buddy film, like it kind of makes it a kids movie more than Raiders.
It does. I've
and-
not watched it until recently to coincide with Blank Check, but yeah, it sucks. Like it's not. It's really not very good.
No.
Raiders, I like. Because Crusade's my favorite one.
Yeah, but it's a rehash of Raiders.
And
It's Raiders with Sean Connery.
I thought that was all. I thought this is an example of like, that's my favorite one. I kind of thought we were all on the same page vis-a-vis Last Crusade being the best Indiana Jones. And then I found out that everyone's like, no, it's Raiders is the best. Like, Jedi's my favorite Star Wars. I know that is an unpopular opinion.
Yeah.
Back to the Future 3, my favorite Back to the Future. I understand.
Back to the Future
most people
2.
disagree. Back to the Future sucks.
Minus the soundtrack.
They should delete it Wile E. Coyote versus Acme style.
The fact that they go to the future to change something and it's all just
it's a great 10
MacGuffin.
minutes. Oh boy, that 10 minutes is so fun. The rest of that movie sucks.
Completely disagree. I think it's once they like Hell Valley and then alternate 55, like and all that. I think that is fascinating. Movie inside of a movie. Great experiment. I can't believe a studio and a sequel got to do that. But going to the future, I don't actually think is that fun because the whole time I'm thinking like you can't go to the future to change something because as soon as you leave the
Your
future,
kids, Marty.
your kids.
Back to the Future 3 is the best one
You're
because of
high.
cowboy shit.
Mary Steenburgen is boring, like watching paint dry.
Cannot. Oh, wrong.
Jedi,
Have you
2/3 of that movie, beginning and end, amazing.
I got my Ewok shirt on.
The middle of that movie, where Harrison Ford doesn't want to be in the movie, it's a hard watch. But the
Wrong.
beginning and the end, I think are great.
Honestly, well, what they need is it would be better if there were even more Ewoks in it. And there's more Ewoks in that
I'm
movie
fine with that.
than even arguably the Ewok TV movies because they had a bigger budget for more Ewoks in Jedi than they did in the
Yeah.
standalone Ewok movies. But that was one where I didn't find out until adulthood that people hated Ewoks. Like I knew
Yeah.
Jedi was not other people's favorite one, but they're like, oh, stupid fucking Ewoks. I was like, you mean the best thing in Star Wars? They're
I don't think
just-
they're the best thing, but
They
I
are.
don't think they are what makes Jedi not as solid as
right.
the
They
first
cause,
one
right
or
because
Empire.
it's you're right. It's what makes it the best one. They're great. It wasn't until Porgs came along where I was like, oh, I think I understand. I think I feel about Porgs the way other people feel about Ewoks of just like
Oh, except for
this
Porgs
is too
are
cute by half.
just dumb and like Ewoks have personality. They have a
Yeah.
hierarchy. Like there is a colony where Porgs are just kind of these annoying gnats.
And
But
the
they're
reason they're
cute.
in the movie is interesting to me. Of like, there were these weird little puffin birds on the island they were filming on, and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
we can't. The EPA or whatever says we can't murder all these birds or like scare them away.
Can
So
we? Hey, can we murder all these birds?
So we just have to let them kind of like hop around in shots or whatever, and they're like, we'll just CGI over them with some space nonsense.
Yeah, because they said they're like, we'll fix this in post, and
Yeah.
they
So
literally.
that's fine. But then they're just like they're too involved. You know, if they were just background stuff, it's like, oh, those are neat. But it's like the little
It's funny that
marshmallow people in
It's
the
funny that
later
the
Ghostbusters.
Porgs did that for you, and you didn't have that same sense with the Gungans and Phantom Menace, because I think
Oh.
the Gungans are more Ewok.
Hey, don't get me wrong.
Than-
I hate the Gungans.
Right. But like the storyline and kind of like the battle in Phantom Menace with the Gungans, they're slightly more evolved technologically
yeah, they had
as a
they had
species.
tech.
Yeah. But it
Ewoks
is
are
kind of the same
classified
Ewok
as
story.
animals, basically, not sentient beings, which is bullshit. Because there was
Oh, yeah, I don't agree with that.
an early Star Wars role playing game, and when I was in middle
Yeah.
school, some of my friends were like getting a group together to play it. And I was like, "Oh, I'll
You got
play.
laid all the time.
Can I be an Ewok?" And they're like, "No." And I was like, "What do you mean, no? We're all just pretending to be Star Wars characters. I'm gonna pretend to be an Ewok." And they're like, "You can't because they don't have a high enough intelligence." I was like, "Then I'll be a dumb Ewok." I don't. They're like, "No, it's against the rules. You can't because it's not a sentient."
They take down
race.
the Empire. What do
Yeah.
you mean doesn't have a high enough intelligence?
I was
They're
like,
smarter than stormtroopers.
they build hang gliders, and they have a system of governance. I think.
They made me cry. They understand deities.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's and they
Ewoks
also
kick ass.
this is nothing new. Is they were supposed to be Wookiees. It was supposed to be Kashyyyk, the
Yeah.
land where Chewbacca comes from. But they
Couldn't
did
find
that in the
enough tall
holiday
people,
special.
Just got a bunch.
No,
of
they did it in the holiday special, and
Yeah.
Lucas is like, "Nope, it's kind of weird. It's kind of creepy. I saw an old man jork it. Like,
Yeah.
we got to make it cute. We got to make. I mean, it was marketing, but
Yeah.
I do
You know
think
what else
they're.
was? Everything else about Star
Everything.
Wars. The whole franchise.
But I do. It
is
blows my mind
to
that the
sell
speeder
toys.
bike chase on Endor looks better than most of the CGI in any of the other Star Wars movies. Like whenever they show him on like speeder bikes or like
Yeah, it's rad.
Hayden Christensen in Episode 2 when he's going to kill all the Tusken Raiders, all the sand people, but that's the offensive term.
Yeah, I like
for
that
it.
you added it in there at the end. To like really.
And but like so, I mean, that's Obi-Wan is just like, ooh, sand people, and Luke's like, whoa, really, Obi?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, ugh.
Not cool, old man.
Yeah, not cool, but like, this checks. But yeah, so like when he's riding, I remember seeing that, and I was just like, this looks terrible. Like this rear screen projection or blue screen or whatever that they did on Endor in what is that, Redwood Forest that Endor is? Like looked way better in 83 than this horse shit.
Yeah, it's so cool. That's why it's the best one. It's because it's got Ewoks.
So what do you think about Leia and Luke just skimming past finding out that they're brother and sister? You think it's just a feeling? They're like, oh yeah, it's a feeling I always knew, and like, let's not get
She
hung
says
up on it.
so much. She's like, yeah, I get it. Because she's force sensitive. So like that reveal, she's like, yeah, I get it. Like that's fine. If they did another proper follow up to Jedi, maybe I don't know, address it. Be like, so are you hosting Thanksgiving this year, or is that?
Well, sorry, my question wasn't
Um,
like the taboo, like the joke, the incestuous nature of like it being them being in a three-way love triangle with
Yeah.
Han
Well,
like,
that,
in the
I
first
mean-
movie. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying more of the lack of reaction that Darth Vader is her father.
Well,
Like you don't like I would have liked to have lived in that moment a little bit of just being like this is probably a lot because your birth father who you've had evil interactions with who destroyed your planet and your adoptive parents because by that time we don't know how much she knows. She's like I have a memory of my mother or blah blah blah. Like we don't know about the Organas. We don't know that Jimmy Smits is her dad.
I
or
mean, Leia's
stepdad.
underwritten throughout the series. So, yes,
Yeah.
it would have been nice to have a scene of her processing that information.
Or even if like Force Ghost Obi-Wan, like once she is like, once we see that she is Force sensitive, it would have been nice for within that movie to be like, all right, and here's the ghost of Obi-Wan. He and HR is going to take over for the rest of how you're feeling because I need to go over here so you can
Yeah, I gotta
go
go kill
have a therapy
Dad,
session.
so-
Yeah, I got to go kill Dad. I mean, I have to either bring him to our side or roast his ass. So,
Throw him in another lava pit. Take this, Pops.
oh, can you imagine how bad that stank when they do that Viker, like the fire Viking
You
funeral?
wouldn't even. Oh, yeah. I thought you meant Mustafar. I was like, you wouldn't even notice the burning flesh smell. That place would be so stinky.
Only thing that would smell better would be burning Ewoks.
They're the cutest. If Kathleen Kennedy calls me today and she's like, Glenn, we're greenlighting any Star Wars project you want. What are you doing? David Attenborough Ewok.
I like this
documentary.
game. Ewok
2 hour
Narrated,
documentary about Ewoks, narrated by David Attenborough.
I mean that is a society like after Jedi. What does Endor become? Like what do the Ewoks
It doesn't
do?
go good. It doesn't
No?
go good for them.
Do you know?
I don't know like the official ruling, but so well, because you see in the later trilogy, uh, Kylo Ren's got Vader's helmet, which was on Endor, and he doesn't seem like a particularly chill dude to just like show up, be like, "Hey, I need this," and then just like walk away. So yeah,
Oh, I love this.
I don't think. I feel like, hey, if we're testing Starkiller Base out on something, it might as well be on the moon that
Na 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 na
killed
na
my
na na na
grandpa.
na 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 na
And,
na na. Slice,
yeah.
slice, slice, slice. Oh, that is fantastic.
I mean, it's bad because it's sad because Ewoks are the best. There is, I know in some of the books, there's a like an Ewok pilot, who.
Oh, there is like who pilots,
Yeah.
not like a pilot, like a backdoor like sitcom.
No,
Like
he
there's
flies-
a pilot that didn't get picked up. Yeah.
the
Okay.
Ewok flies planes. I think there might be like a story with an Ewok jet. I want to see an Ewok with a lightsaber fuck shit up. That's what I want, but not in
Fuck
the
yeah, I don't wanna
not
see
in the
Yoda.
nature documentary. The nature documentary is just
The history.
here's how they hunt for food. Here's how they build their hang gliders to fight giant monsters sometimes. Here's
how they capture and torture stormtroopers.
yeah. Here's 30-minute uninterrupted shot of the cute little baby Ewok all wrapped up. in a
Here's
little
the
blanket.
mating ritual
Yeah.
between a dominant and a
Here's Endor after dark.
dookie, or what is that? Yub nub.
Yub-nub.
Yub
These nuts.
nub. That's what's funny is about the special editions where they're like, hey, you know all that stuff that was fun?
Yeah.
We're gonna get rid of that and replace it with dumber stuff.
Yeah, what if
And
we
it's
made
just like,
these worse? What if we took these beloved films and just made them worse?
Yeah, like, And Spielberg happy to do that too by replacing all the guns with walkie-talkies.
Yeah, but he walked it back. He's like, "Oh, actually, I thought about it, and that was dumb as hell. We're not going to do that anymore."
Did he?
Yeah.
Did he change it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Like,
good.
I don't know the most recent media release of ET, but the walkie-talkies aren't in there.
Yeah, I'm one of the people that I have. It's Harmy. It's the Swedish guy or whatever, or Ukrainian, despecialized edition. So he was able to take all of the best looking versions of Star Wars and made versions in 4K
Yeah.
on Blu-ray that look like how you would have watched them on VHS without the Ewoks having fucking eyelids and without Rox being in front of R2D2 in the first one. Did you watch Obi-Wan Kenobi?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought I wanted Ewan McGregor more Obi-Wan Kenobi. I did not. And that storyline with Princess Leia.
He's great. The show is dumb.
Yeah. Not
Because
good.
the whole thing with him and Leia, it's like, well, it's not like she doesn't see him on the Death Star and she's like, I know that guy. She's like reaching out. She's like, "Oh, Ben, you helped my father in the Clone War. Also, we had a whole adventure together. Remember the adventure? Do you remember the weeks long adventure we had?"
The hypocrisy within a franchise drives me insane. Like the lack of continuity. I mean, obviously, classically, all the shit that's in the prequels. But then, like, they continue to do it. And it's just like, look, I don't need you to be, like, uber beholden to this Bible. Just don't blatantly, like, just come up with things. It's like, well, this doesn't make any fucking
I
sense.
famously
It's
hate
the same as
idea of
Darth
canon
Vader.
in storytelling.
Darth Vader at the end of Rogue One.
Yeah, where people are cheering for the villain of the next movie.
And he's just like throwing dudes with the Force, shish kebabbing people like with his lightsaber, killing rebels. And ostensibly, when he gets at the end of that hallway, he is entering New Hope.
Yeah.
He is entering the first Star Wars, where he then does not exude any of his Force
Right.
powers.
He doesn't
He
do any
straight
of
up
that shit.
picks a dude, yeah, and like puts his lightsaber away. Like, okay, you just got through all this, like, and you're trying to get information by Force or by whatever, and then you just stop. Well, he got tired. He got tie.
He needs a little nappy. It's like how in Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy Krueger is scary. Nightmare on Elm Street probably 2 on, he's just kind of like a goofy ass clown because people are like, we love this weird little knife guy. We like his messed up
Yeah.
face and his cool sweater. Where like he kind of becomes the hero of those movies in a way, where people are just
Yes.
like, you're kind of rooting for him to just kill people in interesting ways, which is what that hallway thing is in Rogue
Yes.
One, of just like, I was genuinely, I saw it in like, I don't think it was full, but like I saw it with a crowd, you know? And I was like genuinely kind of disgusted when people were literally cheering for Darth Vader mowing people down.
Yeah.
Of just like, guys, he's the bad guy. And they're like, oh, he's so cool. Oh, he's so cool. He's so big and strong. Oh, we like how many murders he's doing.
You're like, okay, let's replace these people with Ewoks or puppies,
Well,
and let's see if you
somebody-
think this is cool.
I forget who, somebody in a video essay about Rogue One that I watched, because everyone that I was talking to was like, it's like the best Star Wars movie in years. I was like, I kind of hated the whole thing.
100%.
But I saw a video that agreed with me, so I was like, finally. So just to know I'm not crazy, I was like, someone tell me they didn't like this movie. And they compared it to, the Civil War movie Glory
Yeah.
with Matthew Broderick and
Denzel Washington, Morgan Freeman. Yep.
So they compared it to, like, let's say you're watching the movie Glory with an audience, right? And then at the end of the movie, there's some like huge Confederate soldier comes up and he's just like mowing people down in a hallway, and then suddenly
Mowing down
everyone
Yanks.
you've been watching the
Yeah.
movie with just starts cheering for that guy for some reason. Where it's like, yeah, if you only watch Rogue One, right? If you are not a big Star Wars fan, you've not seen the other movies, you just watch Rogue One, that is an insane experience.
I think it's more insane having watched the other Star Wars
Well,
movies.
because you see Vader a couple times in Rogue One, and he is clearly one of the bad guys, right?
Yes.
So even if you don't know, he's the bad guy from the other movie, where he's got this, because somebody was arguing, they're like, well, no, it's because like we see Anakin's redemption arc, so you're still kind of like, you can kind of, but I was like, yeah, that comes 3 movies later, my guy. That's not, he's not
He's also not
saved Anakin.
He's also not redeemed. He's also not redemptive.
Correct.
That's why one of the best lines in which Last Jedi has some of my favorite and some of my least favorite stuff in it is when Luke is just like, hey man, like, turns out when you devote any bit of like your life or your energy to like one, like a very thin line of that you have to walk, you probably are going to disappoint. You are going to make some mistakes. So you kind of have to be gray. And Darth Vader doesn't have, like, he is not redeemed. Or I don't think so. Like, because he's not
If he doesn't
magically
if he
a
doesn't
father. He's
die.
not magically a good guy.
Right, let's say
Like
he
Kylo
survives.
Ren it's bullshit. Like they make Kylo Ren redeemed, which is fucking
They
insane.
tanked that storyline. So he was so interesting to me in Force Awakens because they're kind of setting it up like he's like Nega Luke, basically, where Luke is, starting training under Obi-Wan, learning about the light side of the Force, and then is like being pulled towards the dark side a little bit because of who his father is. Then we have Kylo Ren trains under
Luke.
Luke,
And then
with that kind of dark influence, then idolizes his grandfather, and then is being like, he goes at it from the dark side, and then he's getting pulled gradually to the light side. But they fumbled that storyline so badly that when it happens, it's straight up goofy. Once him and Ray go back to back, it's like, Jesus Christ, God! Like this could have been a neat moment. Like you could have built
When they
towards this
kiss.
and had it be justified, but you did not do that.
No.
It's just poo poo pee pee.
Well, no, I mean that's, but we get that.
I like
And
the idea
again, to
of
say,
seeing
like,
a bad guy struggling with not wanting to be a bad guy anymore. That's why like Red Dead Redemption 2 is so good, the video game.
Yeah.
Because you're just like a outlaw bandit guy who's like, I don't know, what if we didn't just murder and rob people all the time?
Oh, okay. Cobra Kai finale, bawling like a baby.
Yeah.
The only storyline I was not 100% on board with, because I do think A Show About Balance did an incredibly good job of balancing the ending of each one of these characters in a good way. The Kreese one, the born again Kreese, he sees a kid die with his knife, spoilers,
Yeah.
and then he's
We're
just
gonna
like,
spoil
oh,
Cobra
fuck.
Kai, so just skip this part if you want to.
Yeah, done been spoiled. And so then he is Felonious Monk Kreese, and I just don't buy. I don't think. I mean, Martin Kove, not the greatest actor.
I put on Threads after finishing Cobra Kai that I want to see a Duke Nukem TV show starring Martin Kove as like late in
Old
life
Duke.
just old Duke Nukem's getting pulled back
Old
in for,
man
like,
Duke. Yeah.
maybe not even like like The Wrestler, but with Duke Nukem, where it's just like, he's too old for this shit. It's not
He's
going to
too
go
old for
good,
this shit.
but he's
Yeah.
just doing it anyway. But him blowing up the boat is the craziest thing I've seen in a television show.
It's
Because
wild,
you see it coming,
highly
it's
telegraphed.
so telegraphed,
Yes.
and you're like, well, they're not really gonna, like, he's not gonna throw the cigar at the pile of fuel or whatever. That's just
The
on
pile
boat for
of
some
fuel,
reason.
highly flammable. Throw
not-
here,
right.
like if it was like an airplane movie or one of the
Yeah,
Top
that- it
Secret,
was
there would
almost-
have been a target for like a dunking booth for
Yeah.
him to throw his.
It was
and he doesn't.
Zucker
he
Brothers
lofts
level.
it.
Yeah, hook
like
shots it
this.
from across the.
Yeah. With his spindly little old man arms.
Oh, it was riveting television to be watching that. I was like, oh my god, he's gonna blow up himself and Silver on this boat. And
It
then
was
they do
literally
it,
the only
and
way.
The explosion is so insane too. Like it's not just like, oh, now there's a fire, they're on a boat in the middle of the ocean. They're like, no, we're gonna blow them up comic style. It looks like the Death Star blowing up. Where it's just like an insane
It is
explosion.
an After Effects. So I will say, I ragged on the beginning of Cobra Kai's production level for the beginning of the season. They clearly did save it up for the end. Like I do feel like the
They
show
did
ends
not
up looking
save
better.
up for that boat explosion.
Not for the boat
That was a
explosion.
budget
It is.
operation.
It is.
That was a
an
model
After
in a
Effects
bathtub.
flame. Like
Yeah.
it. Oh, I think it wasn't even anything real. I think it was
Stock photo of a
yeah,
boat.
of a boat with a flame posted, pictured over it.
Insane. But I also did enjoy it. I think we talked about it.
So, what did you think about Kreese's journey at the end?
I
Do you
genuinely
buy
still
that
thought
he...
it was all a bit. Where like,
okay,
because
So it worked
everything he
then.
did for the whole series was I have a second sneaky little goal. So when he's like, "Oh no, I'm kind of a good guy now," it's like, "Oh yeah, but you're still gonna you're gonna murder."
Sneaky little
LaRusso.
goal for their stinky little hole.
But then he's
Like,
like,
it
"No,
is-
I'm just gonna kill myself and this guy who sucks."
Because he has to. I mean, literally, they keep on. Their story is they don't have quote unquote characters. Like I'm glad that they didn't make Kreese Johnny's actual dad. Like that ended up not being a
Yeah,
thing.
that would have been terrible.
I'm glad that Tori, or right, is that her name?
Probably.
Tori Nichols? No, I'm the bad girl. whatever, with who ends up with Robbie, whatever her character's name is.
Yeah, I don't know.
I said about loving it so much, and now it's a week
Yeah.
later, and I'm like, oh, I fucking forgot. But anyway, I'm glad that they didn't make her mom Hilary Swank, because they were always, that's why they didn't show her. It was kind of like this thing of like, oh, the woman who's dying of cancer, that's how we can bring in the next Karate Kid, is have Hilary Swank be that.
I
I'm glad
don't
they
think I
didn't
would
do
have
that.
minded that.
It's just unnecessary.
I don't think it needed it, but
Yeah.
if Kreese was Johnny's father, I'm like, well, that's dumb.
Yes.
You know, because no, he's not. Because in the other movie, he's not like, hey, Dad, can we go to the karate tournament together? Like that's. it
Well,
would-
we are to believe
would be
that
dumb.
Johnny doesn't know who his dad is.
yeah, but it's great that the one clip that you posted of yourself crying, where he's yelling at Kreese, where it's
Yeah.
like he's yelling at him as if he is his father.
Yes. Oh, that,
Which is
but
a
that's
nice
all I needed.
moment that I think falls apart if it is actually his father.
Agreed.
You
I
know?
think it is handled so well that Johnny, part of his disappointment and part of Kreese's now understanding that, again, I don't fully buy, but I definitely did also cry like a baby, is Kreese is like, I was that role to you, and I fucked it up.
Yeah.
And Johnny's like, yeah, you fucked it up. Like, we could have been beautiful, man. Like, we could have been beautiful. Like,
Right, and he doesn't have an actual dad to yell at, so he's got to yell at this guy.
well, and Ed Asner, who is his stepdaddy, has been dead, but they still refer to him as being alive, and they're just like, we can't cut to him. Like,
Oh yeah, maybe we'll ask him for money. Oh, we can't. Why? Don't worry about it.
yeah,
He's busy. He's busy being real. He's so sleepy lately. We don't know why.
so dead. But yeah, all like, I don't. God, the show was just so good with the humor, with the story, with doing the tropes at the end, and especially those last couple episodes.
Johnny
that I
and
know you
LaRusso
made,
did need to kiss.
huh?
They needed to kiss.
They almost did.
The two
There's that
karate-
scene.
The two karate kids.
when he's training and Cobra Kai, like inside, and Daniel's training him, and they're outside, and he's like, all right, break's over. They are, because they're doing Rocky 3. It's the same scene as like, you hear me say I'm afraid. It's like the Apollo and him running. They do Rocky 2 when
Rocky
they fly
3,
back.
My favorite Rocky movie.
When they, okay, Mr. T, of course, it's
Yeah,
your favorite
obviously.
Rocky movie. Pain. But they fly back when Miguel's mom's gonna die with Johnny's daughter bleeding out. That's, oh my god! When they go into the hospital room and it's the bed is covered with blood. I was like, oh no. I was like, okay,
The
like
timing of
what's, I was
that-
like, what's the less? Yes, the tone shift is bananas.
I try not to like nitpick, like, oh well, it would take this many hours for this character to fly, but like,
Yes,
we're gonna fly from Barcelona to California to see if she's okay. Where by the time you get there, she's either okay or dead. Nothing you can do.
nothing you
about
can
it.
do.
Wait a couple hours to take that flight, and then they're like, "Oh, all right, you're fine. We're gonna just immediately fly right back." And then
They wanted to do the Rocky 2 where it was like she says win for me, because that's what Adrian does when they think she's in the coma and she comes out of the coma and she's pregnant with
I don't
Rocky
know Rocky
Jr.
2 as well as Rocky 3.
Rocky 2 is fucking
doesn't have Mr. T
fantastic.
in it.
It does not, but it has one of the most homoerotic charged moments of a Rocky movie that gets overlooked, is when Apollo is tired of getting hate mail for beating Rocky but not beating him.
Mhm.
You're right, because there's some racism going on, because some
Sure.
people don't love that the heavyweight
Philadelphia in the
champion
80s?
is a black man. Yeah.
What?
So he's
No,
getting
are you
hate
sure?
mail, and then he's like, "You know what we need to do?" He's like, we need to promote this where, like, I'm gonna look like a villain. I'm okay with looking like a villain. We're gonna challenge him, and he's with his people, his reps in his office, and everyone's like, "Yeah, Apollo, yeah," and his manager's just like sitting there, Duke, and he's just like, "What? Well, you don't think I can beat him?" And his manager gets up, looks around at all his other posse, and he's just like, I saw you beat that man like no man has been beat before. And that man just kept on coming after you. Baby, we don't need that kind of man in our lives. And I'm just like, oh, they're going to kiss. Yes. They love each other. Like, But Cobra Kai did all of those things without them making that misstep that I think a lot of things do now that are doing member berries or nostalgia or requels or whatever, where they like straight up wink and they're like, because you know the franchise or these tropes or these things that
they
we're
did
referencing.
some of that where it's
A
like
little bit.
every half a season they bring in a new character. We're like, I genuinely did not even remember this dude from the third movie. What are we doing?
Oh, the final guy when they're in the valley and he's the ref, he's
Yeah.
the guest ref, and then it's like, oh, cause remember he was an All Valley champ, and they showed him like
Yeah,
in the
it's
first
like-
movie for a hot second, and it's just like, okay, cool.
Yeah, whatever.
But they don't stay on it for too long,
Right.
especially in that last season. The character and the emotions and like the arcs of everybody, I think it is now one of my favorite shows of all time. I've gone back to start it to be like, I remember liking it, but it's been a while because it took them like 6 years to do 4 seasons with COVID and everything. And so starting it back again, I'm like, man, you know what?
yeah.
It's solid from the beginning.
I'm probably not gonna be rewatching it anytime
Have
soon.
you watched Righteous Gemstones?
Yeah, I think I missed the last couple episodes of season 3, so I'm getting caught up on those. But that's a
So-
fun show.
The first episode of season 4 is phenomenal,
Is
and it's
Mr.
the
T in it?
last season.
I hope so. I hope he makes an appearance.
not.
He should, because again, we've talked about it before. Mr. T very religious. He would fit right in.
Oh, him leading his own church would be
I would go.
fantastic. Well, yeah, in real life. I meant
Yeah.
like on the show.
Oh,
Like,
I mean in real life. If Mr. T started a mega church, I would go to it.
ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today to respect the Lord.
I would love it. Praise
Comedy
him, the whole
wise,
thing.
besides your horny joke,
Oh well, the line, there's a horny line at the end of that joke, and I did it at the open mic, and my friend, comedian Andy Pollock's like, I think that's the dirtiest joke I've ever heard you tell.
ooh,
And I was like, I guess maybe.
oh, do you insinuate that Roy Schreider's gonna blow?
No,
Richard Dreyfuss?
It is so. All right, I'll just do it. So the joke with the glasses thing was like he puts Hooper's glasses in his mouth. That's the yuckiest thing that happens in Jaws. I don't like that I did it with my own glasses. I wouldn't do it with my wife's glasses, and we've been married for almost 20 years, so most of that lady has been in my mouth at some point.
Oh yeah, hell yeah,
And that's where Andy's like, I don't know.
bad
man.
boy Glenn Tickle.
I think the dirtiest joke I have is the big dick one, where it's like, oh, I have like a reputation as like this clean comic and like I'm a good dad, which I just think overshadows what I want to be remembered for, which is my enormous hog. And I think that's
But that's not
dirty.
dirty. Like that's a misdirect where the other one is straight up.
But then the tag on that joke is "Daddy swinging a hammer," and not enough people are talking about it. And I think that's.
But again, it's ridiculous. Like there's something
it's not
soft
it's
and
true.
cute about it.
It's
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't. The thing is that joke doesn't work very often, and I think it is because
It's
People are like-
outside of your persona.
yeah, they're like, we don't. No, like you look like you gotta go get your kids from soccer practice. We don't want you here. We don't want to hear you talking about your big dick.
We were
But that's
we-
why it's
we've
funny
talked-
to me. Of
We've
like,
talked about Milton Berle's
yeah,
legendary ginormous hog. We
You
were
know how
talking
Milton
about
Berle
it.
died? Saw my hog and he knew it was bested, so his heart just gave out.
You just like flipped the Chuck Norris on him.
Yeah. I showed
Except
him
for now
enough
it's
to
Glenn
win,
Tickle.
and then he died.
We discussed all that with Caitlin Manowski in the green room before the show on Saturday at hashtag Comedy Club.
Milton Berle's dick.
Yeah, we were. I don't remember who
All right, we
brought
gotta
it
get
up.
ready for this show. All right, famously big hog on Milton Berle.
Well, we said
Is
like
that your
of all
pre-show
the things
ritual?
that he is known for,
Mm-hmm.
because she was unfamiliar with that. Where like, I would not be surprised if on his IMDb if it didn't say like one of the first innovators of television comedy, known for stealing jokes. Like I am pretty sure probably one of the first things listed in like that paragraph is notoriously large hog.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's wild that is the thing
That's
that
what I
people
want.
know him for. For Glenn Tickle.
Yeah, on my Wikipedia page that people have yet to write. Paragraph 1.
Do you think do you not have a Wikipedia page? I don't think I do either.
No, I want one.
Hey, triple digit listeners, maybe create one for Daddy-O, which will then splinter off.
I mentioned there's
I'm
one
on
for
Wikipedia.
there's one for the movie that I made. I'm
Yeah.
quoted in a few because of like articles that I've written over the years for Geekosystem and stuff. But yeah, I don't have a separate one, and you're not supposed to create your own. And
No, that's no.
people are like,
Faux
oh, well,
pas.
you still can. I was like, right, but doing so seems sad and desperate. So I just
Yes.
I won't. But yeah, there should
I
be a
mentioned
subheader.
for Sweetmeats on the Troma filmography, and I mentioned Adam Marcus, who wrote and directed Jason Goes to Hell, for the first time publicly on the podcast we used to do, Cinema Toast Crunchcast, with Mike Flincham, revealed that Jason was a Deadite in his movie, and that was the first time he had ever said that. So, like, we're on his page, but yeah, I don't think I have my own Wikipedia. Let me see. I don't think I do.
I haven't looked in a while. I was on the homie Michael Kent's podcast. The internet says it's true, and I asked his listeners to do it because it is a fairly
Oh, and they
Wikipedia
did.
heavy
They
show.
still didn't.
I haven't
Yeah.
looked.
All right, I'm
Let's
searching
look for-
myself.
This is the new segment on the show where Ricky and Glenn Google themselves.
See if
like,
they have
narcissistic
Wikipedias. No, I have no Wikipedia. So if anybody wants to put one, let me see. Glenneth, Glenneth.
Did you mean Glenn Tingle? I did not actually. I meant
Did you
the
mean
name
Glenn
that I
Tingle?
typed in. So I'm quoted.
Oh, I see the Geekosystem one.
Yeah, I'm quoted in
Magnum
the
opus.
XKCD comic, their page, the 3D the 3D pen, Music Fest. Why am I quoted for the Running Man?
Well,
that
it's
looks
you're
like
not. It's would
that
it
looks
tickle
like
your
it's-
fancy?
Several Ways to Die Trying is the movie that I made in college. The Town, and then
The Town with
just
Ben
looks like
Affleck?
mistakes.
Mistakes. Well, this looks like a bunch of mistakes. How were your shows this weekend? Any new jokes?
No, I feel like writing new jokes is weak beta shit. I'm just gonna be playing the hits from here on out.
Really? Just the
Um,
hits?
Just the hits, you know. I've written so many bangers, you know. I'm just gonna
You're
gonna
like Billy
rely
Joel.
on-
You're like, what? Yeah, like I have a songbook of my oeuvre, and I have a fly swatter. I'm going to make you, the audience, vote on which songs.
What, I don't know. Did I even do shows? I did the open mic. Oh, I did my class finished up. And
Hey!
they had their grad show Monday night.
How'd that go?
It went good. They all had good sets.
Nobody
One
went
of
over.
them-
Nobody ran
One of
late.
them went a little long, but again, she was like doing well. You know, I think
They
she had
paid for it.
she had gone up one other time, but like your second time on stage, most of the audience was there to see that lady specifically. It's like, yeah, if you want to do 6 and 5, like I explained to them a lot of like it is important not to run the light because it makes you look bad and will genuinely prevent people from booking you for things in the future. But also like if you do 5 minutes and 30 seconds, you're an adult. I'm not going to yell at you. Like it's just it would be
Yeah.
cool. But also we were doing it in the movie theater at the venue, like in between screenings of Mickey 17. So we're like, we need to be done on time, or Bong Joon-ho is going to be upset with me. So we just we're running at a pace. But yeah,
So is there any scuttlebutt, or is there any like smack talk that you can talk about your students now that that they've now graduated? Was there
two
anybody
of them
that
dropped
like
the class. There's always I feel like there's usually 2 people who don't finish for whatever reason. So those people are obviously cowards, and I don't respect them. The 5 people who finished, who like made it through and did the grad show, great job, genuinely.
they should all continue doing comedy?
They are welcome to, yes. It's like sometimes I've done the class over the years, and there's like a couple people where it's like, I mean, I guess I have to let you do the grad show because like you paid to take the class, but honestly, maybe sit this one out, or like please don't fall in love with this art form. I do not want to see you at open mics. But no one in this class everyone did good. I'd be happy to run into any of them at a show. What was interesting was, so this is, I think, the second or third class I've taught in a row where it is mostly women. One of the
Interesting.
cowards who dropped
I
was
like
the other
that.
man in the class. So it was down to one guy, four women, me, and my teaching assistant, my friend Craig, who had to miss the grad show because of family reasons. But it was just this one guy, and then mostly women, and then me and Craig. And the one of the first kind of assignments is like, think about what you want your set to be about.
Hmm.
Like, you don't have to write it out. You don't have to come in next week with your 5 minute set written, but I
What's
want to
the
know
overall narrative?
topics. Like, what are you thinking about doing?
Hmm.
And the guy came in and he's like, oh, so I think I want to talk about the differences between men and women. And immediately we're all like, I will hear you out, man, but I got to tell you, I'm skeptical. And he's like, well, you know how like all women, and we're like, stop right there. And it's like, no. And he he had like the general joke. He's like, oh, the joke was basic, not to do this man's joke, but he's like, you know how whenever any woman says the word fine, it can mean like 100 different things. And we're like, dog, no. And he's like, well, when my wife says fine, she said it means like a lot. I'm like, that's the joke. Talk about how when your wife
Hmm.
says fine, when this one person that you know that you have a personal
Yes.
specific relationship with,
Stop generalizing it.
then we're on board. It's the same joke. It is just it
Hmm.
changes it from all women do this to my wife does this, and we're like, yep, that's how you fix the joke, man. And he took the note is the thing that I'm like genuinely proud of this guy. Like he wasn't argumentative about it, wasn't combative, and then even the women in the class weren't like, "Ugh, you gross idiot man." They're just like, "No, we want you to have a good set. Like we're all in the class together, so we are all actively trying to help you have the best set that you can." And he wasn't like defensive or weird about it. He's just like, "I understand. I see how that changes the joke. That's what the joke became, and like it worked at the grad show. And his wife was
Great.
there, and we're like, yeah, I mean, you run the risk of irritating your wife with the joke, but but that's up
You
to
probably
you.
irritate. It's probably irritating that your wife has to be at that show anyway. So
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have to be, but
Um,
not court ordered.
but yeah, they all did great.
I'm happy. I'm glad that a majority of the people who took the class were women because more often or not, it's so many dudes that are just like, "Oh man, I got to show people how funny
Yeah.
I
Well,
am."
the class realized it. I think the last or penultimate class, the one woman's like, "Oh, I just noticed like it's so many more women than men in this class." And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, especially because two of the men aren't in the class. It's me and Craig, and we don't count."
Hmm.
Um, and I'm like, I think that was true of the last one, and I think it was probably at least close to an even split the time before that. Um, and she's like, "Do you think that's because men don't think they need to take a class?" And I was like, "Yeah,
Oh
maybe."
yeah. I
Uh,
mean, there is a little bit of that where they have a little bit more chutzpah, where they're just like, "I'm just gonna go do it. I'll
yeah,
just sign up for an open mic," and then
and that's what
it's
I did.
awful because well, but I mean, then there's also that perception of just like, oh, if you take a comedy class, you're not funny because blah blah blah. You
Yeah.
shouldn't have
Well,
to take the
part of it
class.
was I asked everybody week one. I was like, "Why did you take a comedy class? Like, what do you want?
Ooh, yeah, like
What do you want
public
to get out of it?"
speaking or yeah.
It's usually a pretty even split of people like it seems fun. I just want to try it. Uh, there's usually only ever one or two people who's like because I want to be a professional stand-up comedian. Um, no one in the class said it this time. Like there's
Mhm.
usually a couple. None of them were like because I want to dedicate myself to the art of stand-up comedy. Um, the one woman had done it before and was just like she's like I kind of wanted to get back into it, but it's been a while and like some of the open mics in the area aren't particularly welcoming, so like it seemed like a good way to kind of get into it. I was like, great.
Mhm.
One, shout out to Heather who took my class and introduced herself by saying, when I was like, "Why did you take this class?" She's like, "Well, there was a soup tasting event at the venue today, but it sold out, and I needed something to do for a few hours while my mom was getting her nails done." And I was like, so you signed up for a 6-week comedy class? And she's like, I didn't realize it was 6 weeks.
Well, you thought you were going to get all of this
It's
wisdom
like,
in one
great.
day?
She came in every time with truly wild stories, mostly about her dad. And then she brought her dad to the grad show. And we're all like, it feels like we're meeting a celebrity. Honestly, this
Oh,
man's life is incredible. Um,
that's a
so
great name for an album or a special. Truly Wild Stories.
yeah, it was good. Everyone, I'm very proud of all of them. I have to cut their clips up and send them to them after this. Uh, it's nice. It's good. I like teaching stand up comedy because it's a good excuse to get to talk about it um, for a couple hours, a few
I
Sundays in
think
a
it's a
row.
I think it's also a really good reminder of just the fundamentals of kind of like why we do it, how it's done, like how the sausage is made. Because like I often kind of forget about the basis of a lot of things of just being like, oh, okay, if you get comfortable enough, like you can get on stage and you can use charisma or you can just use just being loose on stage. And just because you're doing time doesn't necessarily mean that it is funny.
Hmm.
But so sometimes looking at more of the basics, you're just like, oh, okay, this is how we weave all of it together. So we're telling jokes and we're doing stand up without it looking like, like probably your students, how many of them started by saying, let me tell you a little bit about myself.
Yeah, usually about half.
Yeah, and that again, it's fine for
Which yeah, like
newer.
when you're starting out, that's a great way to start out. Part of it, part of the class that I've only done, I think the last 2 times, because I talk so much about like writing exercises in the class where it's like just I feel like I got to be honest with you guys. I don't do any of these. This is not how I generate material. I think the jokes that come out of these aren't the best jokes. But I say that as a guy who's written thousands of jokes in the past 15
Hmm.
years. If I'm just starting out, I look at these very differently. Of like, yeah, you gotta. It's a numbers game, baby. You gotta write 100 jokes to get a good joke. So
Hmm.
yeah, like here's some writing exercises that I think you should do because it will get you in the habit of writing jokes and thinking about things as jokes. I would rather eat a bag of gravel than do any of these exercises and then bring those jokes on stage at an actual show. Um, and then somebody in the class a couple times ago is they're like, "Well, hey, you keep telling us like what you don't do. Can you explain how you
What
write
you
jokes?"
do? Yeah.
And I was like, "I can, but honestly, I don't think you should do it this way." And it is because it's like, well, yeah, this is how I do it now, 15 years in,
Right.
and
It's the
I
more
don't think it's
advanced version.
I don't think it's better. I just think it is. Uh, like some of it is just like bad habits that I have baked in at this point. Some of it is ADHD of just like, yeah, if your brain works normal, I don't know that you need to worry about this part. But it is like, oh yeah, so the short version is just like you just kind of have to live your life and then notice when things are funny. Write a little
Hmm.
note in your phone about it. And then the next time you go to perform stand up comedy, look at that notes app before you go on stage and pick a few things that you want to talk about and then talk about those things on stage.
And if
And
something like if something catches fire in your brain while you're talking about it and you have the idea, let it go to your mouth.
yeah,
Because then if something charges a neuron that fires off like while you're discussing this other thing that you thought was humorous, you're kind of yes anding your past self. And if you're excited about it, a lot of times that will curry a lot of favor with, in my experience, with the audience. Like something like exactly what you just said was you could sometimes pick a topic and do a little writing exercise for yourself of just be like, okay, I have this joke about shoes and it's connected about aging or like how I used to buy shoes and how I do now. And so like in your head you go, okay, what are maybe five observations or some jokes that involve shoes that kind of splinter off from this other idea that is maybe
yeah.
narratively
Well,
or
that is one
emotionally
of the
connected.
exercises that I do. So there's two that I actually use if I'm writing a joke. I've heard it called different things, but mind mapping is the term that
Oh,
that
good.
I learned
I
it
didn't know
as.
that. That makes
Of
sense.
like, I've been talking a lot about my hero, Mr. T, on stage lately. So when I realized I kept bringing him up because there was like one joke I had that references the A Team, and it's a setup because I have the intro to the show memorized and it's fun to do for an audience. So it's like, oh, I'll
Mhm.
bring that up, and then I realized I kept bringing him up. So it's like, all right, I will write Mr. T on the middle of a big piece of paper. I will circle Mr. T. I'll draw a line. I'll draw another little circle, and I write something about Mr. T, and I'll keep doing that, and you like branch out until everything that I know about Mr. T basically is on one page that I can look at. And then it's like, all right, what about this can I work into jokes that I'm so that I can, because part of the joke about it is just it's funny to me how many times I bring up Mr. T, a guy who's not been famous for like 30 years, in 2025. And the other one that I do is just rather than the whole mind map thing, that is more like I guess organizational. Sometimes I'll like write Mr. T, underline it, just list stuff. But it depends on kind of what I'm trying to get out of it, which one I use. Those two I use, but that's not joke writing. That is like thought organizing, I guess, is a better.
I don't know. I think it can be begat. Like it can mind mapping can be the structure of joke writing for it to then evolve because you're putting down the thoughts and then you're kind of writing down the setup and then you're coming up with the punchlines or you're
Right.
what
Well, I
what
have.
was the
So when I go up, it's I don't write stuff out longhand, which is a thing that I tell them they should do. I was like, you should write your joke out and look at it and figure out what parts of the setup you can cut out. Because especially when you're starting, I guarantee you there's a
the
lot
word
of that
economy?
that can go.
Yeah.
Um, the guy who took the class, David, the student who just graduated,
Whose
uh,
wife is fine.
whose wife is fine. He had a very good set. She said she liked it a lot. But
She said it was fine.
he
She's
had
like, it
one
was fine.
he had one joke where it's I we all understood the first half of it. And I feel weird like just doing their bits to explain the joke, but it's basically
I think it's
his
incredibly helpful. I think this is the part of the show that is, if anybody is listening for the
okay. I'll do like
minutia,
a
yeah.
truncated version, but again, shout out to David. I forget your last name, bud. I'm so sorry. We'll have him on. We probably won't, but maybe. Uh, he used to work as an emergency room nurse, and he has ADHD. He talked about this on stage, so I don't feel like it's I'm not
Mhm.
violating his HIPAA rights to bring it up. He's like, I think having ADD in an emergency room setting is really helpful because I can go from stitching somebody up to checking somebody's blood pressure. Like it's really easy.
Mhm.
And then he goes, but when you're in the surgical suite, and then he like pauses, expecting a laugh, and we're all like, man, we're not. I've never been in a surgical suite. I don't like. I don't
Mhm.
know. I don't know what. I'm sure it's different, but I don't know what or how.
Mhm.
So I think you can get to just saying it and then pausing for a laugh, but we need more information before that happens.
Mhm.
Um, so he reworked it, and so that was an instance of like you actually need more setup, which is
Mm. Mm.
usually it's fairly unusual for like because a lot of the other jokes in the class where it's like, all right, you're kind of jumping topic to topic. There's a lot of details we don't need here.
And you have 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing is, when you're starting out and you're doing something like a comedy class where you're getting ready for a 5-minute grad show, that is a different goal than what I have when I'm writing material. I am like, all right, what is the next hour going to be? So it's not like, oh, I
Yes.
just need to write 5 minutes for this thing. It
But
is
for
like,
but you would agree that that is for good and for bad. It's the same as like self-editing while writing. So say like sometimes I do with like writing scripts or like a sketch, a play, or whatever that could be put into production. If you constantly are wearing the producer's hat at all times while writing
Mhm.
and you self edit for good and for bad, of being like, well, I'm going to write it this way because I know that's how we can produce it.
Yeah.
You could then also be being the gatekeeper of some really good ideas that if you were just letting it go. So I too now am trying to work towards more of like what you could quote unquote say is like the one man show. Like what is the narrative of the piece of the whole set, regardless if the audience hits you over the head, like gets that, like, did you see what the theme was for all that?
Yeah.
I'm
Well, I
trying to
just
think of that
mean-
way, but I also don't want to like keep completely like I'll put it away if it's a joke that I'm like, okay, I like this. It maybe doesn't fit to go with your Mr. T thing. It maybe doesn't go with anything now that I recognize, but
Right.
maybe as this shit evolves, it'll be like, oh, I'm going to clump this because it actually does give
Yeah.
a piece of me and supports this, or this.
Well, that's, I mean, especially because I skew towards longer stories than jokey jokes, you know? So
I think similar. You would say the same for me, right? I
Yeah.
mean, there are jokey jokes, but I think
you have a
it's
couple,
more
like you
a vibe.
have like more kind of set up punchline jokes in your
Yeah.
act than I do.
Yeah.
But you also tend to do longer bits or stories. But like the one that I did at the grad show, it was basically I didn't watch the clip. It's probably longer than 5 minutes. It's like one longish story of a show that I did in Canada, which is like a framing story because it's got a joke about my name. It establishes, you know, a theme because I'm going to perform at this wedding, and then I talk about my wife, and then I get to talk about Mr. T because he is my wife. We're married and in love, and it's like it's weird because if you write Canadian wedding, my wife.
Wait, holy
Mr.
shit.
T.
Have you ever said that you are technically Mr. T as well?
Yeah. Because when I talk, I think I say it maybe on the first album. Because I talk about I wanted to change my name when I started substitute teaching because I didn't want kids to make fun of me. And then one of my friends was like, just tell them to call you Mr. T. I was like, I can't afford that much gold on a substitute teacher salary. You're being ridiculous.
Yes.
Right now.
But have you like reworked that idea, not necessarily that line, but still using that setup in your A-Team stuff now?
I think I brought that line back.
Back, okay.
Because I don't.
I forgot about that.
I know I've done that joke a lot in the past. I don't remember if it is actually on the recording of.
Because that is a good, I think that is a good, you know, like you said, kind of chunking together where it's about your name, but it's also
I could work in
goes
something
in
about
with your
Mr.
Mr.
Tickle.
T-Love.
Are you familiar with Mr. Tickle? Not me or Bill, the children's book character with he's an orange circle with crazy long arms.
Yes.
Yeah, not as popular as I thought because, like, obviously, my family is aware of the children's book of our name.
Sure.
Not everyone is. There was a Mr. Men show for a while on Cartoon Network, but it wasn't like particularly popular, nor was he a major character in it.
I think the Mr. Tickle book was maybe, if I had to guess a year, I would say mid to late 70s.
Probably.
So because I
know-
have two older brothers,
Yeah.
I've seen some older things of like children stuff like that because it was like hand me downs of certain things. So I think that's why I'm familiar.
Yeah. But back to my point of like working towards different goals than my students. It's like, well, yeah, obviously, like, but if you learn anything, you like if you're taking a carpentry class from me, a guy who's been a carpenter for 15 years, we're gonna use the saw differently, you know? Like I don't actually know anything about carpentry to finish this example, but
To finish this metaphor.
yeah. It's like, well, yeah, you have to learn how to write jokes with these little exercises. And then you have to like realize, oh, there's a better way for me to do it than you know, making a list of things that I hate and trying to convince like the one exercise my friend Aaliyah included in her version of this class at the venue is she's like, write 5 things that you hate and then write 5 things that you love. And then the next part of the exercise is like, write about a thing that you hate as if you love it and write about something that you love as if you hate it. I do not remember her example, but it is a very funny joke. And it's like, all right, so she includes an example of like, here's the system worked, right? I wrote this funny joke this way. And it's like, yeah, I understand that you can generate material that way. I don't want to. I don't like. I don't want to think about the things that I hate, nor do I want to talk about them, nor do I want to pretend
Unless
that
it's
I
on a
love them.
podcast Wednesdays at 9:00.
That's yeah, no,
called
that's
Daddy
different.
O.
It's because you wake me up so goddamn early.
Wake me up. Similarly, and again, I think it's just about experience and level. There are some things like, well, obviously, if you're going to do it's not a thing you've written, but the A-Team opening, you want to say that verbatim of what it is because that's what sells, why it's so awesome that
Yeah.
when you get into it.
And
so
it's
like there's
funny
some
because
bits.
it's so long, and I've had it memorized since childhood.
But there are some bits that you do want if there is a cadence or a rhythm or something lyrical to it that it's like, okay, part of what makes this work is if it is scripted, that if it is directly, that it is this, that you get into the rhythm and you're saying this, the same thing, whatever,
Right.
then you might write it out word for word. But like similarly, I had an observation the other night of, that like the twin boys, they're 1 year old and their cribs are next to each other, and the jail cell of it all, like the bars or whatnot. But that I thought it was funny that I was like, oh man, so they fall asleep downstairs and we carry them up and we put them in there, and the next morning they wake up side by side, like screaming, looking at each other, like just like drunk tank. Like every
Yeah.
morning they're just like, oh, how long are you in here for? Or just like, I just think that's a funny observation. I don't know necessarily that there's any more jokes than the jail thing, but I'm probably going to say it on stage inside of another bit about
I was
them
gonna say,
and then go from there.
I think I've heard a joke similar to this, but it genuinely might have been from you. of like, it's got to be weird for a baby to like fall asleep and then wake up in a different place.
I don't know. I don't know if that's an observation or something that I've said, but there are things like that. So like even if it's like the guy in your class saying about like all women. So if there is a general topic that is pretty relatable, like we all know what baby cribs look like. We all know they look like Back to the Future. We all know like Uncle Joey, like in the jail cell, like get used to these bars.
Yeah.
Everybody has a pretty good understanding that cribs are kind of like baby jails. But then if you make it more specific about like my children or what my view on it is, if I over dramatize it, and if I make it a bit or like an act out or something bigger,
Yeah.
then that's what makes it a bit. Where as a writing exercise, if you are someone in a class just starting off for 5 minutes, what do you do? Do you tell a quick version of that, or do you do just a 5-minute version where it's an act out and it's all this? It's really up to your own like taste and flavor, and trying to make it honestly the funniest that it can be. The Friday night show that I did at Urban Apples in Westfield, Indianapolis. It's the once a month show that I host and had booked. Feature and headliner were husband and wife, Garrett Teitelbaum, Osha Dwyer. They're Pittsburgh transplants into Cincinnati. They're both hilarious. Osha, I think, and this isn't to backhand compliment Garrett, but like I think Osha, if she doesn't pop and we're not hearing about her within the next 5 years, I'd be very surprised. Whip smart, very funny. But so I emceed, and it was okay. It was fine. Working some new stuff because that's why I'm doing that slot.
Yeah.
But afterwards, older woman came up to me. She's like, "You are my favorite." I was like, "Oh, thank you." And she's like, "I think you should continue doing this." I was like, "Oh, thank you so much." I was like, "That's really nice to hear. Thank you." She's like, "You know why you were my favorite?" And I said, "Why?" And she said, "I could understand what you were saying. You enunciated very well."
Boo. Don't go to comedy shows anymore. You're not allowed.
Yeah.
banned.
But again, it's that thing of like people that go and see comedy shows aren't always the best people to judge comedy, even though they are the audience and the goal is to get them to laugh.
Yeah.
You don't always have to like take it on the chin. Like, oh, is anybody in your class going to continue? Did they talk about?
Some of them said that I mean, I don't know if they're going to try to pursue it at a professional level, but I know they mentioned they're like, no, we're gonna like keep going to the open mics. None of them came to the night after the grad show because the grad show was Monday.
So you're already like, yeah,
Yeah, grad show was Monday. The open mic was Tuesday, and they weren't there, but they were there. A lot of them went the one before when I was in Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
So they
How were
went to
their
the one
sets?
that I host, that Aaliyah was hosting in my absence, and then they went to another one in town. And when they came in Sunday morning, it was great because a couple of them were running late, so they all kind of came in staggered, and then
Mhm.
basically told me the exact same thing. They're like, "That other mic's very different than than the one
Oh,
here."
do tell. Like, how?
Um,
What was the
They meant
observations?
worse. So I was like, yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of that. A lot of the mics that you go to are going to be closer to that one than the one
Mm-hmm.
at Steel Stacks. And again, it's got nothing. I'm not saying I host the best open mic. I'm the worst thing about it, besides the needlessly complicated system that they have in place. But a criticism that I've heard of the Steel Stacks mic from other comics in the area is like they are trying too hard to like police the content. And I was like, okay, but if there's one venue in the area that is like overcorrecting for this genuine problem in comedy, fine. But also, I'm like, well, grow up and look at it as like a writing exercise if you want. Where, yeah, if you get
Mm-hmm.
booked on a TV spot, there's parameters that you need to work in. Most paid gig, if you do a corporate gig, if you do a college, most clubs will tell you like, hey, don't, no slurs. What like they all
Mm-hmm.
have parameters that you need to work in. The idea that like you're gonna go from doing bar open mic comedy to just suddenly like a tour where you're saying whatever dumb thing you want is it's not gonna happen. So like
It doesn't. It doesn't happen to us, and we are not at the highest echelon of any of this. But like, we don't get like every booking that I do, and I will this weekend because it is a an agency booking. It is at a winery. But the first thing that I will do, because I'm not the one that booked it, is
yeah,
I will say to them, "Is are there any restrictions?"
right. Like I'm doing a church gig Friday and then a fundraiser Saturday. So in both instances, I'm gonna be like, "Hey, is there anything specific you don't want me to bring up or talk about?" I have a pretty good handle on like what is appropriate in these settings, but if there's anything specific, let me know.
And they usually will be like, I don't want to hear the effort too much, or no
Yeah,
Lord's name in vain, or just whatever. Like, I don't want to hear any slurs. And it's like, great. So then sometimes if they hem haul, or they're just like, oh, I don't want to stifle you, like if they're in that headspace, and if I'm not aware of what their clientele's flavor is, I will help them out and be like, okay, so would you like a PG-13, like something like if you saw it on the Tonight Show, like a late night talk show set,
yeah,
that's cool, but nothing like too hard or whatever. And they'll be like, oh yeah, that's perfect. Or they will be like, oh no, just do whatever you need to do. And then that's your job on stage as you're kind of reading the audience. If you say something that maybe doesn't jive super well, assess why, possibly while your mouth is still talking and going
sure.
through it, and not like course correct or try to like revamp your act, but don't, like, if you realize that you're losing a section of the audience off the jump about something, have enough tools in your bag and be a good enough entertainer to be like, oh, okay, they don't love hearing about kids right now. So maybe it needs to be more relationship, or it needs to be more observation. And as a comic, I can do that. I can maybe toss out a little bit of the set that I wanted to do something that genuinely, like, generally usually works,
Sure.
and I'll say that, and then maybe I'll try to bring back in the other stuff that I thought I was going to do to just get them back. But that's, again, shit you don't learn until you've been doing it for a while.
Right. And I mean, you can tell newer comics to do that, but the ability to do it is different
Yes,
than
the
the
ability.
knowledge that you
Yeah.
should. And also, they're like, oh, what if the thing, not just this round of students, but like it comes up almost every single time. They're like, what if I like forget my joke? What if I go blank? And it's like, I don't practice so that doesn't happen. I mean, I'm not going to tell you it doesn't happen to me, but
Yeah.
I have enough of like a backlog of material where it's like, oh, I don't remember what joke I wanted to do after the Jaws one. It's like, all right, I'll just go talk about something else.
Yeah.
It's like I can talk for an hour to an audience and and move from topic to topic based on how one is going because I have several hours worth of material. It's not like, oh yeah, I have 5 minutes and I forgot two of them. Oh no, like that's a bigger issue. But
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I mean that goes away the more you do it. Because the other thing, so my friend Aaliyah, when she teaches the class, I think she approaches it differently than me because she seems to genuinely believe that like at the end of a 6 week comedy class, they're gonna be good at comedy. And I'm like, no, no, no. They'll have a good set. Like I can get you to have a good 5 minute set at a grad show. That's the goal, right? But really what it is we're explaining how the system works and like giving you the tools to like keep doing this and getting better on your own.
Well, yeah, the only promise that you give to them is that if you stick it out, you will for 5 minutes, unless you break down to a shambles of a mess, be able to stand on stage and approximate what stand-up
Yeah.
comedy
You'll have a
is
pretty good
in
five
front of
minutes at a
people.
grad show. And then
Yeah.
if you keep doing it, you might actually get good at it someday.
And
But
then
I'm
you
like,
also have bad experiences, and you'll go to other open mics that suck.
yeah,
You'll run into people who suck. You'll run into bookers who suck. Like you'll run to audiences who's like that. I mean, it's literally it is life.
yeah, it is. The other point I keep making in the class is like, yeah, it's about iteration. Like, if you look at this as you're only getting ready to do this one grad show and you hang up all this stuff on like how that goes, I think it's the wrong way to look at it. If you're like, I do comedy now, I go to open mics, I do shows, then there's always another show. Um,
For good and for bad.
yeah. Where usually when I do a show, it goes well. Sometimes it doesn't, but I've been doing it long enough that like a bad set doesn't really rattle me anymore because it's like, well, I mean, statistically, that's kind of an anomaly. Like usually it goes good. That's why I get to keep doing it. But it is not like if I bomb one night, it's like, oh man, I'm terrible at comedy. I'm like, I don't know, I had an off night, or it's a weird crowd, or some other third thing. But it's if you've only done a grad show and one open mic and you have a bad set, then that's 30% of your comedy career has gone
You're
poorly.
batting it. Your batting average.
Yeah, but it's like, yeah, I don't know. It just if you keep doing it, you can, juice those numbers in your favor a little bit.
Juice those numbers.
Juice
Take
those
some
numbers
steroids.
in
I
your
did want to, before we get out of here, a positive thing. This past weekend did hashtag comedy club in Columbus. Can say nothing too nice about them. I know I had said at first I was worried because they weren't really promoting the show. I think it's just because they're busy. They do a lot of stuff there to be a small club.
Sure.
It's more like a black box location. Went so well that the Daddy-O tour should be there in the fall,
rad.
possibly doing
Because I
4
reached out to
shows.
them a
So
while ago and I haven't heard anything. But again,
again, and
I will like send one email and then not ever follow up.
I was starting to take it personally. I think it's just they get busy. They have a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
They do
Oh,
a lot
I
of
like.
improv.
I've had
Well,
people
but I mean,
recently email me about booking. He's like, I'm not. I don't book anything. I don't know what. I don't know what you want from me.
but it was I had a great time with the venue. The show from beginning to end was a whole lot of fun, and there was a comedian who had stuck around from the show before, who when I got off stage, he's like, undefeated. He's like, you were undefeated. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, the crowd work. He's like, your crowd work was undefeated. He's like, each time, like it just worked every time you went to the crowd. And I was like, well, I don't necessarily feel that 100%, but like that is not me. That is the audience just kind of had gold, and I just was
Sure.
able to mine it and work with it. But yeah, one of my favorite shows that I've done in a long time, and I'm excited because it is in Columbus, in Ohio, and I think
Yeah, you sent
it's
me
a
the
cool
video. I
spot.
haven't had I scrubbed through it a bit, but I haven't had a chance to sit down and watch the whole thing. But
Well, you don't have to watch the whole
I
thing.
probably
But
won't. But
at the end of at the
I
end
know
of the day, the
I
main thing I
scrubbed
was
through
wanting to
and like
say
I
is
got towards the end and it was jokes I'd heard already. So those
yeah.
ones I probably won't watch. But
But it's a cool place. I am looking forward to because I believe we can probably do 4 shows there, 2 on a Friday, 2 on a
yeah,
Saturday
because you said it's like a smaller
in
room.
September. Yeah. I think max it could probably hold maybe 80 because it's more
Yeah.
like a black
Because
box. But
there's another venue here in Jersey that I've been talking to, but it is like also pretty small. So it's like I don't know if it would be worth. It's one of those things where it's like, well, it's worth it for me to drive to a different part of the state that I live in and do a show for 50 people than it is for you to get here.
it's
And
yeah, it's similarly. It's what
you know,
I've been thinking about as we've been putting together things. So if that place in Jersey, if we could do a handful of shows
right?
and fill out, if we do 4 shows and it's 200 people, then I'm down for it. I mean, it's worth it to have these bangers of shows that are filled with audience members that like really want to see us or to see comedy. And that's the one of my favorite things too about the audience that was at hashtag. There was only like 35, 40 people there, but it was eclectic. The ages ranged. It was very diverse. Like it was just a fun, good night of comedy that a good sign always is Jesse Impanella was the MC, so he sets up a good show, but they were really digging him. So like we've talked about this as the headliner, like standing off stage. I'm just like, oh, this is gonna be a good time. Like not just because Jesse's doing well, it's just like this audience is juiced, like they want to see a good show,
Yeah,
and so it's mine to screw up. If I don't do well, it's because I am checked
yeah.
out or eaten
We were talking
eaten
about it
out.
last week, but like, yeah, I agree. Like that's kind of how I feel if the openers are crushing. It's not like, oh, they're making me look bad. It's like, no, the audience is enjoying the show so far. So like, it is now on me to keep that going rather than like, I got to show them who the real comedian. It's like, no, I
Yeah,
just
I mean, like Mike Larson, who I feel like I had heard the name, but I don't think I had met. He featured, and so I didn't love that it was 3 white dudes basically on the
yeah,
show. That's not my favorite thing, but we are also all 3 very different. He went up there and crushed, and I was just like, what a fun night. I was like, because there's no way anybody is here because they had heard of any 3 of our names. And like looking out, like it seems like everyone basically after the show too, everyone, because there was only 35, 40 people,
hmm
came up to us and be like, we had a great time and you were hilarious and this and this. And this girl, this 14-year-old girl who was there with her dad who loves comedy, um, had some sensory issues, wore headphones and some stuff to make her comfortable enjoying the show, sat in the farthest in the back. She came up to me, which from what I could witness, was probably out of her comfort zone to come up to me after the show. And she said, I just want to tell you, can I tell you something? And I was like, yeah, please. She's like, you had me laugh so hard that my head started hurting. She's like, I just wanted to tell you that, and
you
like
hurt
walked
me.
away.
You hurt
You
me
were,
pretty
yeah.
bad.
I will be calling the authorities. No, but like it was so like I was just like, that is awesome. I was like, this is why, and I feel like I haven't had a show like that in a while. Not to say that I haven't had good shows or good sets, especially coming after off of emceeing the night before. Which the reason why I'm emceeing is to work stuff to put myself in that
That's
hole.
why I agreed to do the open mic. It's like I need
Exactly, and
the lowest
you need the
stakes
reps.
possible because I mean it's easy to try to like fit a new bit in to an hour show, but it's like yeah, but I don't want to have to like try to stay. I just want to. Hey, can I just talk to you guys about Jaws for 5 minutes? And
Hey,
see if this is
can
anything.
I? Yeah.
The other reason I agreed to host it is because like I did probably like 7 to 8 minutes, and it's like well if I just go to the open mic, we can get 5 like everybody else. If I'm hosting it, I'm gonna give myself
Just
extra
like everybody
time,
else.
and I
Yeah, to
I
work.
don't care if they're like, "Hey, you went over." It's like I'm in charge of this. I don't care.
The
Um, 'Cause
psychology.
I
I mean,
didn't do
that's the
45. It's like Yeah, I don't know. There's two kind of longish bits that I want to work out. So I'm just going to
You're
do
like,
those.
I'm not getting off stage until I get my
Kind of.
bucket filled of laughs.
Oh, it's not
But yeah,
even
but
that.
you
It's like
don't
I
do
need to go.
that.
I want to go through the material that I have.
Yes.
Not.
But you're not like, if it doesn't do well, now I got to do some classic
Oh,
ones
this didn't work. I got
to
go
look
out.
good.
I got to go out on a high. I don't care about that. Because I don't respect them.
The
I don't
audience or yourself?
Just I mean, other people in general. But I meant specifically like the other.
until you were
comics.
given a reason to, like, I have a general respect for the for people, but I don't really like truly
I was
giving you my loyalty or respect because I don't know you.
I was trying to explain. So a couple of the comics that I went to get food after the mic, uh, and it's all like comics that I've known for a little while now. Um, and I was trying to explain. I was like, oh, because the one comic I introduced his name reversed, like last name first name.
Conti
Um,
Fats.
yeah, and it's like, oh, it wasn't until I did it, and then I walked off stage. I was like, I think I've heard it. I think I messed that up. And he's like, yeah, and I'm like, I've introduced that dude on. He was at all. I think all the other ones that I've hosted. I've seen him at mics. I've heard that guy's name a lot of times. I should know it, but it's like I kind of don't register the other comics until like they start getting kind of good, where it's and
No, I'm
Danny Oravec, one of the comics that I was eating with last night, he's like, "Oh, so that's you're just like trying to figure out a way to explain that like in a nice way that you're kind of a dick." And I was like, "Yeah, man, honestly, kind of." And it's like I'm self-aware enough to understand that that's what it is. But there's comics who've been at that mic a bunch, and it's like I don't know. I could not for $1,000 tell you what your name is, bud. And it's like if you when you get good at this, then maybe. Um, I like there's people I'm friends with now where it's like, oh, do you remember the first time we met? Nah, dog. I didn't clock you as a person for probably 6 months. Um, it is. I think it's in one of the World War One books. I think maybe All Quiet on the Western Front.
one of them. Oh,
Well,
okay.
there's a couple notable ones. It's all Quiet on the Western Front and Red Badge of Courage, where one of the soldiers is telling somebody else like, "Hey, don't make friends with the new guys because
They're
statistically
gonna be gone.
they're
Yeah.
not going to be around long." And that's kind of how I feel about open mic comics, where it's just like, yeah, a lot of you guys are going to drop off in a couple of weeks. I don't have the brain space to learn names I'm not going to need a month from now. So it's like, yeah, if you keep coming and you keep, showing up,
I also don't
you'll
want to be
stick
phony.
eventually.
I don't want to be phony, and I don't want to be trapped into then this persona or this relationship that you now perceive that we have, that we think that we have to then keep up a relationship, or anytime we see each other, like that we have to go through this rigmarole. Like, I don't.
I know we're going a little long, but there's one other thing I wanted to bring up. I texted
Yeah.
you individually a petty bitch text. Uh, and it's a couple of
Which one?
times,
Which
a couple of times
there was a
lately,
flurry.
people have asked me for favors and it irritates me. But it's I'm trying to pin down exactly why. And I think part of the answer is that I'm kind of a jerk. But
No.
also, my friend Tristan asked me to do him a favor and drive him to Minnesota. So I was like, absolutely. I would love to because I've said it before and I will continue to say I'm the world's number one Tristan Miller fan. Happy to do favors. But like somebody a couple times, so this one isn't even anybody specific. People be like, "Hey, are you available to do a show on this day?" And then I say, "Oh, thanks for reaching out. I'm not, but if you're doing it another time, feel free to hit
Mhm.
me up again." And
You
then
don't want
they
to close the
reply
door
with,
forever.
"Yeah," they reply with, "Well, do you know anyone who would be available on that day?" No, dog. I'm not suddenly your booker. I'm not in charge of making your lineup go good just because I'm not available to do it. And I love recommending my comedy friends for stuff, but I also don't I don't know everybody's schedule. I'm not going to like check in. Uh,
Right. So the specificity of saying, do you know anybody else that is available? Like,
yeah.
no, I don't know who's available, but here's the short list of 5 people that I would book if
And
I
a couple
needed
of the people
somebody.
who have done it recently, it's like, hey, we know mostly the same people. So it's like I can tell you to book Aaliyah Brown instead of me, but you already know Aaliyah, so you don't need
You're like,
me
because
to
I say her name 5
bring her
times
up on
or
the
more
podcast.
every
We should get Aaliyah on if
podcast.
she's up early enough.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
but
she's a daddy, right?
the other, for sure. I think the other one that drove me crazy was, I'm not going to name him because I'm pointing out that I don't like this thing that he did. He's a comic that I've known for a while. Like years ago, we'd be at the same mics. Haven't seen him for a long time. He kind of popped up again recently. I was excited to see him. Right? It was we ran into each other randomly in front of a venue in New York a couple months ago. He recognized me. It took me a little while to figure out who he was, and it was like, oh no, but it wasn't the thing I was talking about before of like I have no idea who this person is. It just took a little while to be like, oh hey man, and then I genuinely was excited to see him. Uh, he sent me a request. He's like, could you put me in touch with any famous people? I want to start a podcast, and I want the first guest to be very famous. And
So it's obviously a joke to some degree.
so, right, the reason he wants it to be a very famous person is because to him, he thinks it would be funny to start a podcast and have the first guest be like the most famous person. And I'm like, I agree,
But
but
it also would be it's anything that you create and put out there in the world. The hardest thing is getting eyes and ears on it.
yeah,
So again, percentage wise, if you have a notable name on a first episode of the thing, you're probably going to get subscribers and they're going to be like, well, who else are you going to have on? This is something there's a validation. It's something worth listening to. But proceed.
the thing that bugs me about it is like, yes, I do know some famous people. No, I'm not going
Yes.
to ask them if they want to do a guy I barely knows podcast that doesn't exist yet. That's an insane thing to ask. Like, yeah, I know famous people I've not asked to do this podcast, you know?
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's like, I don't know. We could probably, some of them would probably say yes, honestly, but it's like, I don't know. It's not really a guest show. We do it so early in the morning. I'm not going to inconvenience. Like, hey, can you wake up hella early and talk to my friend Ricky?
Hella early. 9
Um,
a.m. It is not hella
What other
early.
comedy thing happens at 9 in the morning? You absolute lunatic. But yeah, it's like so I got the text. I sent it to you as just like this is insane, right? But I asked a
And
couple
what
other
did what did
people.
narcissistic Ricky say? Who's always whoring himself.
I think you were on my side. I don't remember exactly what you said. But
I was on
also-
your side, but I was like, I'll do it.
Yeah. Well,
I was like, if I'm
honestly,
famous
I'm not gonna
enough.
lie. Part of it was
Yeah.
my reaction of like, hey, I'm famous.
Was sure. Yeah. I mean, as far as like more famous, like if you obviously you want someone that's bigger or whatever, more name recognition, but like,
Yeah.
I
But
would
also, if
definitely.
you're speaking to the comic who sent me this, who I do genuinely like you,
who is one of
I'm
the
not-
triple digit listeners.
I'm not mad about this. I just think it is a wild thing to ask. Or this was not to me. There's a comedian that I know who's going to do a bringer show in Manhattan, even though he took my class, and in the class we're like, hey, bringer shows are predatory. Do not do them. He's doing one. He's an adult man. I'm not his dad. He can do whatever he wants, right? I've advised him against it. He's made the decision to do it anyway. Okay, man, live your life. He reached out to a friend of mine. He's like, hey, you know people in New York, right? Could you ask them to come to my bringer show? That's insane, right? That's a wild move. Like, sure, ask your friends, right? Be like, hey, do you want to come in the city and watch this thing? No, I
Hey,
don't.
I
But-
will get you a drink. Hey, I will buy the first round.
Yeah.
Hey, whatever. Like, yeah.
But hey, can you exploit your relationships with people for my benefit exclusively, not yours at all? It feels like just people out here making wild asks of each other is a thing that I don't.
I agree, and it's always how it's presented and the tone and the vibe, and there's so many other specifics to the scenarios. But I am one of those people that believe you should ask. Like, there's too many people that like don't ask things, but then this goes to what we've talked about before, the delusion sometimes, where again, Cinnamon Toast Crunchcast. It's recorded somewhere, not in my grasp, because it was when I had sent in an audition for SNL, so we smartly didn't post it. But I had blanketed, especially in the earlier Wild West days of social media. This is only like 6 years ago. Sent out a bunch of requests for notable named guests to come on that I thought would be fun and blah, blah, blah. Michael Shea was one of them. DMs open on Instagram. And he read it and responded and was like, went off. And like, I was then respectful of his response of being like, I don't know you what, and I'm going to do a podcast where I would have to watch a movie and then come on and talk about it and do all this. I'm like, you're not wrong, but like just vitriol from him.
Yeah,
and then I was like, I get it 100%. Like,
I think
don't
you told
want
me
to.
this story before. I was
like,
of on
cool.
his side in sentiment, but not execution. You know?
Well, okay. And then he then proceeded when I was just like, yep, get it, whatever, yep. And then he kept on just being like, who do you think you are?
Yeah, that's
like,
just unhinged behavior is what that
And then
is.
shit came out about Shay of just like, I wasn't the only person that he has had a bit of a conflict with, but I was a stranger.
I mean, I'm not going to act like I'm getting requests all the time, but a couple people have reached out to be like, hey, I don't have a ton of listeners, but like, do you want to come on my podcast? And I'm usually game, you know, unless there's, even when I was like, I hired a PR firm to get me on podcasts to promote World Crime League. And I think there was only one that I turned down because it's like, oh, you actually seem like you're maybe kind of a huge piece of shit. I don't want to be associated with you or this podcast. But there were other ones. There's one where it's like, tell us an album that you really like. We will tell you. There was the two co-hosts. Like, we will each give you an album to listen to, and then we'll like round table it. We'll talk about your album, then ask you about the ones that we made you listen to. And I was like, yeah, I actually don't listen to a lot of music. Sure, that sounds fun. So I sent them. I think Harvey Danger's. I think it was King James version, maybe, or Merrymaker is one of those. It was a Harvey Danger album, almost certainly. But then they sent me. It was Insane Clown Posse, and another band that sucks. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, what am I doing? But like, we kind of emailed back and forth a couple of times about it. I was like, they seem like nice guys. I only know of ICP as like a punchline. I've never actually listened.
It was guys? Guys sent you ICP? Huh.
I've never actually listened to it. So like, you know what? Yeah, I can take the 45 minutes or whatever to actually listen to this album and then talk about it. And I went on the show and was like, guys, I'm not going to lie. I did not enjoy this. Like, this is not for me. I tried to find things that I did like. I cannot remember. Oh, Guar was the other one. It was ICP and Guar. And it's like, guys, I love Guar's commitment to, I think the most positive thing I could say was like, I love Guar's commitment to a bit. Like, their whole, we're monsters from space. We're going to squirt blood at you guys. And like, yeah, okay. I don't want to be there for that, but I love how dedicated you are to your weird art band music thing. But it's like, yeah, I mostly only know them from the scene in Empire Records where they kill Mark. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I'll listen to it, but it's like, I don't actually love this.
Was it a good episode? Do you think it was?
I mean, I didn't listen to a ton of their other. I do. Anytime I get asked to do a thing, I will go listen to some of it to make sure I know what I'm getting into. But it was like a nice chat. I would plug the podcast if I could remember the name of it right now. But type my name into your whatever podcatcher you're listening to this on, and you can probably find it.
I am most definitely for my next workout. I'm going to try to find it
for the listener, but you can do it too.
No, I'm saying for me because I like listening to Glenn Tickle.
But there was one that I really liked called Tyrant in Training, and that was I apologize to my friend who hosts Tyrant in Training. I'm blanking on your name, Kev, I think.
Okay, you're a piece of shit.
He's an Irish guy over there in Ireland doing comedy stuff. I think we maybe found each other on Threads initially, and he was like, do you want to do a podcast where you pretend to be a tyrant of your own country? And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. And it's like it's an easy premise. It's easy to understand. He asked me to do it. We had a lot of fun. I think I launched an asteroid from space at a country in Europe. But the
you're
wrong
Darth
one.
Vader.
Yeah. That's a real fun one, and that was one where it's like, oh yeah, I like if you want to do it, I'll put you guys in touch. It's very fun.
Happily.
But he's like, yeah, not a lot of people listen, but it's like a fun premise. So that's usually the people who like agree to do it are just like, yeah, it's a good idea. And I was like, honestly, that's why I did it. Like, because you seem nice and it's a fun thing to talk about for a little bit.
I'm doing a lot of promotion for Sweetmeats right now, and I'm literally doing anything and everything as long as like I don't look at the podcast and it's just like, oh, big supporters of All Lives Matter or Blue Lives Matter or anything.
The
that's
one that
like
I turned
problematic.
down, the whole thing was about like, oh, there's too many weak men. It's like, oh, you and me aren't gonna chat, bud.
I don't need that. I don't need that listenership or whatever. But someone shot me an email because I had posted. I was just like looking to do whatever, any and all promotion.
Yeah.
And they were just like, oh, okay, there's a few, but there's a small listener base. And so if you don't want to, that's fine. I was like, no. Happy to, whatever, as long
Well,
as
that's
they
like the
don't fall
Michael
under.
Che thing of if somebody reaches out and I don't want to do it, I will just say no, thank
No,
you.
or not
I'm not
respond.
going
I
to
mean, you
yell
should.
at you. Or yes, like
No.
my friend who sent me the thing. Can you put me in touch with famous people? I've not written back because I didn't want like my initial reaction to it was not positive, but it's like I do like this person and I don't want to just like
Yes.
act like I'm mad about. Kevin Ryan is the guy who hosts Tyrant in Training.
Yes, I will. I would love to. I
I'll
think
put you in
that sounds
touch.
like a blast.
It
But
is.
so send a couple
That's
people.
one that I've continued to listen to too. And he talks to like other Irish comedians that I've never heard of. And it's just like, yeah, it's a fun thought exercise. He's good at hosting.
I had posted about like doing podcast or whatever to promote Sweetmeats. And so, like I said, a couple of them have been like, I don't have a lot of listeners or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was just like, doesn't matter to me, happy to do it. But I have gotten a couple. And again, I think it's a fine ask, but it does take a little bit of some balls to be like, oh, okay, so yeah, we would love to do an interview with Lloyd Kaufman. And I was just like, well, that's not happening.
Right.
I was like, one, I'm not asking. Two, I was like, the interview is with me in the film. He knows nothing about this movie. He's maybe watched it, but I was like, he is like, that one, it wouldn't be a good conversation.
Right.
I was like, and two, I was like, it's for me. It's not Lloyd Kaufman. That would be like being like, and James Gunn worked with Lloyd Kaufman, so can we get him on the pod? Like,
Right.
no. Like, no, it's me. Like, this is the dum you're going to be talking to. And if I can convince Nick Hyens to join me with a couple, I will, because that's, again, for my own amusement of not having to say the same things if asked the same questions.
Yeah. I did a bunch around the release of Crime League, and a lot of them, some were like bigger ones that I think I would have gotten asked to do on my own. If I wasn't going through a firm. But then like a lot of them were just like stuff I booked on my own or just like little podcasts that reached out through the PR. And it's like, yeah, I'm happy to do it because I am a narcissist who likes talking about myself and comedy. So
yeah, you got to put it out there, baby.
reach out.
You got to put some daddios
reach out to
there.
the daddios. We'll come talk about our podcast on your podcast.
Please rate, subscribe, write a
else?
review on Apple. If you write it, I will read it. I'm telling you, I will read it. I will do it. So please do that. Share it with your friends and tell us what kind of merch. Please send us some merch ideas for the Daddy-O Tour. What do you want Ricky and Glenn to sling at you?
I think we've
for money.
I think we've locked into the idea of koozies, right?
Yeah.
I think those are.
Yeah, we
those
just
are
got to figure
pretty easy
out
to
like
pull
what's the fun little joke or little
Yeah.
special thing that's on it that just doesn't say Daddy-O.
Right.
Some
It
like
could
world's greatest, like something that plays off of that, but it's for Daddy-O and it's a koozie, so it's like the sheath of the world's greatest mug or can or whatever for
Who
Daddy-O's.
knows? World's greatest koozie. I don't know. Something. We'll get it in
Yeah.
there. But yeah, we'll be back next week to do more of this.
Maybe a guess. Oh no, I talked. I'm sorry. Do you want to do the outro again? I was thinking maybe a guess.
It's the Daddy-O Show. It's the Daddy-O Show.
There it is.
I have to go poop.
Yeah, I'm gonna pee so hard. All right, I'm gonna let that.